Council will call this meeting to order. For the record, is January 28, 2025 at 4:30 PM. We'll begin this afternoon's work session with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Cavanagh.
Here.
Councilwoman Little Roberts. Councilman Taylor. Councilman Overton.
Here.
Councilman Whitlock.
Here.
Councilwoman Strader. Mayor Simison.
Here. Next up is adoption of the agenda.
Here.
Councilman Cavanagh.
We adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a motion second to adopt the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the agenda is adopted. Next up is the consent agenda.
Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
we approve the consent agenda for the mayor to sign, the clerk to attest.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Consent agenda is agreed to. There are no items moved from the consent agenda, so we'll move on to department commission reports. First up is item 9, proposed updates to Title II Meridian City Code regarding city commissions. Good evening, late afternoon, Emily. I don't think we get a call evening just yet.
Good afternoon. Am I on? Right. Okay. Mayor and council members, I'm Emily Kane. I'm a deputy city attorney in your city attorney's office. I'm here to present to you about some proposed updates to Meridian City Code Title II, which relates to city commissions and committees. So first, just a really quick overview of what we're doing today. You've heard this before, but to refresh, since it's been a while, the 2021-25 citywide strategic plan has the goal of updating ordinances and simplifying processes to improve effectiveness and provide premier services to our citizens. And the one and only strategy assigned to the city attorney's office is to perform a complete review of all ordinances, codes, and policies in the city of Meridian. So today's presentation is part of that project as it relates to Title II. So in Title II right now, we address our commissions. So historic preservation, solid waste, arts, parks, transportation, planning and zoning, and the Board of Adjustment. We have other bodies that are addressed in other titles of city code, the compensation committee, districting committee, and the impact fee advisory committee. We also have in our city some ad hoc committees, the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, the Meridian Anti-Drug Coalition, the Senior Advisory Board. Those are some examples of other bodies that are not specifically addressed in our code. My approach to the overhaul of Title II was to organize all these bodies into 4 general categories. So we have advisory commissions, statutory commissions, ad hoc committees, and standing committees. So advisory commissions are those that are established and operate pursuant to city code. And those commissions focus on general city functions, so specific to a particular subject area. So arts, parks, historic preservation. Statutory commissions are the ones that are established and operate pursuant to Idaho code. So the Impact Fee Advisory Committee, that's its title under Idaho code, and the Planning and Zoning Commission. Ad hoc committees are the ones that operate kind of informally. We've had a dog park committee, or MIAC is one that operates kind of informally, come and go as you please. We had a UTV committee or precious metals, something that a group gets together to talk about something on an as needed basis. And then a standing committee are those that are also established by city code that focus on a specific task or action. The Utility Billing Review Committee, or it was called the Board of Adjustment, I'm proposing a name change, or the Districting Committee. And this code is set up it has actually 3 chapters. Our committees are all in one, but advisory commissions and statutory commissions are in their own chapters. So it just sorts everyone into where they go and establishes the rules for each one. So I also work to move redundant provisions from each commission's code into a general kind of umbrella provision that governs each of these 4 categories. I updated language to reflect what the commissions are actually doing right now. Some of the language was outdated because the city has evolved. What we'll see is this theme of a lot of our commissions started out as the kind of the department. So for example, we didn't used to have a parks department. We only had a Parks and Recreation Commission. And as we had a department, we had staff, a lot of the operational things that that commission did had transferred over to staff. And we're seeing that with a few other of our commissions over the years as well. So this update attempts to address some of those changes. The changes clarify roles and responsibilities of commissions and staff and the mayor and council. And this one's a little bit selfish, but we sought to clarify the application of the transparent and open government laws, the open meetings, public records, and ethics laws. Some of the definitions in, for example, the open meetings law do apply to commissions, but not committees. So this sorts some of that out. And finally, I sought to have uniformity in the structure of the code for each commission. So we're not repeating ourselves, but also being inconsistent at the same time. So with that, I'll turn to the draft updates. I'm going to talk about the redlined version that's in your packet. I feel free, of course, to interrupt me, but I'm going to do my best to kind of give the highlights and kind of just haul all the way through there if we can. So starting at the top, so chapter 1 starts with the advisory commissions. And as I said, that's one of our 4 categories of boards that I organized these into. It starts with an explanation of all the advisory commissions, so everything that they have in common. They, again, serve their purpose is to advise the mayor and city council on specific subjects pursuant to this chapter of city code. So A, you'll again see this repeating. So A is the creation, how they're created. There is something I'd point out under section B. I deleted a reference to, well, I moved a reference to the open meetings law to a little bit farther down in section C. And also while I was there, addressed the public records and governmental ethics. So that's all together. And maybe in a better spot, a spot that makes a little more sense. The roles and responsibilities are now described as the duties and authority. And the advisory commissions are established for the purpose of making recommendations to the mayor and city council. They are recommending bodies. A little bit farther down, I moved and consolidated the provisions for advisory commissions regarding bylaws, the chair and the vice chair, and the annual report. In speaking with the commissioners the commissions that were changing from president to chair that was actually the most controversial thing that we talked about. So I'm proposing that they all be called the chair, and that distinguishes them a little bit from city council. You have a president, and this way those bodies have a chair.
And maybe just to add in through that, Emily did go and talk to all the commissions through these change processes for those that weren't aware. Okay.
Right, and that kind of a summary of their comments is in your packet as well. I added some prohibitions for commissioners based on some lessons that we've learned from some other jurisdictions. Commissioners are volunteers, so we don't want them entering into contracts, including verbal agreements and binding the city to the expenditure of funds or making commitments on behalf of the city. Applying for grants, we have a grant procedure our policy that establishes how we do that, and volunteers are not to apply for grants. And entering private property. So of course, as government representatives, they have some obligations and they need to either get consent or a warrant, which would be tough for a volunteer. But if that's where our commissions lead us, that will be a weird day, but that's what you need if you are cloaked as a government representative. So this clarifies that they're not to do that. The next thing I would highlight is membership and qualifications. So all advisory committees or commissions rather, all the information regarding appointment, how big they are, the minimum age, the terms, the process for partial terms, vacancies, reappointments, the kind of nuts and bolts housekeeping stuff is all, that's all here too. So moving on to page 3. Another component of the uniformity is talking about budget. Staff, it clarifies that staff will handle the budgetary requests and handle basically all the money through the processes that we have established for that. Moving on to page 4. So after the umbrella provision, I go into the provisions that address each commission. So starting with arts, each advisory commission's code has 4 sections. The establishment, so why is this commission established? Their duties and powers, what is this commission authorized to do? Their qualifications, so who can serve, and then when did they meet? So the Arts Commission, again, it says their duties and powers are to make recommendations to the mayor, city council, and city staff. And I'd point out that rather than focus on specific tasks, the focus of these rewrites is on subject matter areas. Commissioners are really our subject matter experts and the eyes and ears of the public to know what is going on in the city and provide input on that. And they're uniquely positioned to do that. So this is a list of the areas that we are asking them to look at in that capacity. I'm going to try to hit the highlights and keep on trucking. So please let me know if you have a question. Again, we see in the Arts Commission section there, the arts is an area where we hadn't had staff and now we do have staff. So this shifts some of those operational expectations that we used to have of the commissioners over to staff and clarifies that this is the information we want from the commission, and these are the tasks that we expect of staff. So this does sort some of that out. They've successfully made that transition the way that Parks did. So we are grateful for Cassandra, and she's really taken on these operational tasks so well. So I'm really grateful for that. The one thing I'll point out to you is that near the bottom of page 5, the Arts Commission, I added a provision saying that the commission recommends the adoption of a strategic plan for the arts in Meridian. The MAPS funding is tied to the MAP strategic plan. Those funds can only be spent on that which is outlined in the strategic plan. So we don't have anything in the commission's mandate ordinance that specifies that they do that. So this is an addition. You'll see the language, excuse me, regarding recommendations for the city comprehensive plan in all of these commissions' duties and powers, or most of them. We do rely on those commissions to help update our comprehensive plan. We have our qualifications, then the meetings, and we're on to Historic Preservation Commission. Oh, before we get there, I'll point out that there's another reference to the open meetings law in this, in the Arts Commission's code, and that's an example of something that is taken out in all of them and moved to the umbrella provisions that relate to all of the advisory commissions. Again, addressing the subject matter instead of specific tasks. There are a number of outdated provisions in HPC's provisions. There's a lot of talk about acquiring historic properties and leasing and transferring. So I think at one time it was envisioned that the city would have a number of holdings of historic properties. We're going away from that. So this reflects those changes. There's a catch-all provision. The commission is to recommend actions that may further the protection, enhancement, and preservation of historic properties. So we're still covered. They're still providing input, providing expertise, but not acquiring properties. Moving on. in section 8. So the Parks and Recreation Commission. Again, I'm looking at subject matter rather than specific tasks. The Parks Commission still makes recommendations regarding parks, pathways, and related facilities, rules and regulations, the Parks and Rec Master Plan, the city's comprehensive plan. I'll point out that I added a provision stating that the Parks and Rec Commission will serve as the city's tree board. The National Arbor Day Foundation requires that the city have a tree board, and they've always been that and served in that capacity, but this makes it clear for purpose of our accreditation with that agency to get that award. The qualifications changed a little bit. A demonstrated interest, competence, or knowledge in parks, pathways, open spaces, or recreation. Again, getting that citizen input and somewhat expertise, but more citizen input for parks. The Parks Commission would like to change their regular meeting time to 4 o'clock instead of 5:30. They've been successfully doing that for a little while, so this makes that change as well. The Planning Zoning Commission is deleted right here. I moved it to later, so you have a little break as we cruise to page 11. The Solid Waste Advisory Commission, again, the same structure, establishment, purpose, duties, powers. The commission is tasked with making recommendations regarding ordinances, policies, fees, programs, projects. This is another commission that didn't have staff, and now they do. They used to be all that the city had with regard to these tasks and functions. Now we have staff that does a lot of this, so this represents some of that operational change. The SWAC hears initiatives, concerns, complaints that are brought by the city of Meridian, and oversees the community recycling fund, and again makes comments on the comprehensive plan. We see again that the bottom of page 12, the catch-all that addresses their mandate to address solid waste initiatives. Again, qualifications and meetings. I'm now on page 13. We arrive at the Transportation Commission. Again, establishment, purpose, duties, powers. The Transportation Commission does, their catch-all is actually at the beginning here, policies, programs, and issues related to traffic safety and transportation. They hear concerns and issues referred to the commission. They review lists of priority lists for roadway, intersection, bike, and pedestrian improvement projects and refer that to City Council. They do provide expertise and citizen input, comments on the 5-year work plan. There's some outdated language kind of in our membership provisions that this corrects. For example, it used to say Meridian Joint School District 2. Now we updated that to West Data. So there's a lot of little tweaks throughout this draft. Meetings, I'm now on page 15. So we've journeyed through the first branch of the 4 categories and on to statutory commissions. We only have 2 at this time. There may be others that arise later or in the future, but for now we just have P&Z and the Impact Fee Advisory Committee. So statutory commissions, I'll add some provisions of the relevant Idaho Code provisions that apply to these commissions are mandatory, and some just require that the city code address certain operations. So I made an effort to not cut and paste what was in Idaho Code, and that can live there. And what we need to adopt, made sure that we adopt that here. So we're missing a few, but we're caught up now. You again see I repeated the prohibitions for the commissioners here. Idaho Code Section 676504 states that the Planning and Zoning Commission is to have bylaws, which they haven't had before. So that's a requirement that was added. The appointment of commissioners is addressed in state code, and that is clarified here to match what's in state code.
Mr. Mayor? I can-
Councilman Taylor.
I could just ask you a quick question. When you mentioned P and Z is now required to have bylaws. Does P and Z then have the statutory authority to create those bylaws, or how do they actually, that kind of is an interesting concept. And
Mhm.
do we currently have any bylaws in our P and Z? If you can just take a moment and talk about that for a second, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. We do not currently have bylaws for the Planning and Zoning Commission. That will be corrected in the near future. Our other commissions do have bylaws, and kind of by tradition, we have had the commission's bylaws adopted by city council by resolution, mostly just so we can track them and find them again later so that they can live on Laserfish. Planning and zoning has not had bylaws before, so that is on our list to update all commission bylaws and have planning and zoning adopt some bylaws. The Idaho Code provision, it's not new, so it's something we kind of ran across in this process. But it does just state that they are to have bylaws. It's not, it just says bylaws consistent with this chapter and other laws of the state for transaction of business of the commission. So really, it's, I would envision that it's a lot like the bylaws that we have for the other commissions, just how it works, who runs the meeting and how they get stuff done. Really, there's no other guidelines.
How the chair is selected, some of those
Mhm.
elements.
The housekeeping. Okay, on page 16. So again, stating that city staff deals with expenditures and contracts. The Idaho Code, again, section 676504 talks about, oops, sorry, I skipped up.
Emily,
Yes,
so you're not sharing that screen?
right.
I'm sharing it for you
Thank
over
you.
here, if that's okay.
Thank you. Mine is jumping around. I think I wanted to mention the, oh, here it is. Thank you. The comment 92 there, the code did change section 676526 regarding the area of impact. It required us to do math, which lawyers don't do, but we did it and we had it double checked. But the provisions say that at least the area of impact must be represented to a proportionate degree. Our area of impact in Meridian is about 3% of our population. So whether we have 7 members on the P&Z Commission or 9, 1 member from the area of impact is adequate to meet that statutory requirement. So this code is now updated to reflect that change in the state code. A mention of officers and then meetings. And at the bottom of page 16, I start the discussion of the Impact Fee Advisory Committee. This is governed by Idaho Code Section 678205. And it's relatively short. So we did what is required in the state code, again, left in the state code what needs to be there. Address qualifications as outlined in state code, and their meetings are at least annually as designated by the CFO. All right, moving on to our last 2 branches, committees. So committees are operational tools. They're organized to assist the mayor and staff with operational functions. So either just one time or on an infrequent basis. But whenever we have something to get done that requires or citizens could help us, we have ad hoc committees. And this is an attempt to kind of give some sideboards to that or guidelines to help. So we have our ad hoc committees and our standing committees. Standing committees, again, have an enabling ordinance. So it's this ordinance establishes them and they convene on a regular basis or as required by the ordinance. But again, starting with at the bottom of page 17, all committees, so it's that umbrella provision that governs all of them. So I'll point out just at the top of page 18, committees are established by the mayor and directors and staff. The term of their appointments, oops, sorry, I've ruined my screen again. The term of these appointments is 1 year. Nope, I've done it again. Oh, I guess I made my point. The mayor and the directors establish ad hoc committees and convene them as set forth in this chapter, which is really just this provision. So this is the part where it clarifies the really confusing part of whether open meetings law, public records laws, and governmental ethics apply to these ad hoc committees. So ad hoc committee members are not required to comply with the open meeting law because they're not a public agency under the definition set forth in that statute. However, standing committees do meet that definition. So members of the districting committee, or I should say the districting committee, the Board of Adjustment, the compensation committee, those are subject to open meetings laws. So the public is invited, there needs to be a noticed agenda, there would need to be minutes. But that doesn't apply to these ad hoc committees. They're really just meetings.
Councilman Taylor?
Emily, on section B, it says both standing and ad hoc committees shall be subject to the Idaho Public Records Act, but then in your notes, you say that ad hoc committees are not. Is that a typo, or am I just, if you see on,
Oh, I do see that. Oh, I'm sorry. So that's the Idaho Public Records Act. So the open meetings law does not apply to the ad hoc committees, but the Idaho Public Records Act does apply to both of them. So whatever records produced by the ad hoc committee would still be a public record. Good spot. Yeah, the Public Records Act applies to all city business, so it would apply to both kinds of committees. And same with ethics in government. Whenever anyone's acting on behalf of the government, they are subject to those laws. However, open meetings law, the definition is just slightly different, so.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schrader?
thank you, Emily. First of all, just thanks for providing the red line and all the background information. I thought was really helpful. I just had a question. Where would MDC fit into all of this framework, if at all? I was wondering if you grappled with that. And they're kind of our urban renewal agency in a way. They're kind of a creature that we created, but how do they fit into this?
Mhm. The Meridian Development Corporation is not a city, it's not an arm of the city. Once they were created, they're their own governmental entity. So they're subject to all these laws too, but we are not responsible, we, the city, is not responsible for their compliance with these laws. And the city does not notice their meetings or keep their minutes or anything of that nature. They're responsible for that, even though the city did create them.
Yeah, that's interesting. And going forward, I guess, well, maybe I'll take it offline. I just had some more questions about that, but I appreciate it.
Okay. All right, standing committees is our final of the four. So these again are the ones that we create by city code to do a particular thing. Like commissions, the mayor, with the approval of city council, appoints the members. Their appointment is for 1 year or for however long it takes them to accomplish the particular task. So with the districting committee, however long it takes that committee to accomplish the districting procedures set forth in the code. So we address officers, which is possibly, it might be new for some of these. I don't know that all of these standing committees have had a chair, but that just sets up some order so that it's clear who's in charge. We require agendas, quorum, we address voting and meetings. The provisions in the Meridian Districting Committee have not changed. I did move the parliamentary procedure provisions to the umbrella section above. But otherwise, this is a cut and paste from what we already have for the districting committee. So given that, I'm going to move on to page 22. The compensation committee. These provisions are currently in sections 165C and 179C. One's regarding the mayor's compensation, one relates to the city council's compensation. They're consolidated here and brings them all under the umbrella of standing committees. So we would take them out of Title I and move them to here. Otherwise, there are no substantive changes proposed to these provisions regarding the compensation committee. The Board of Adjustment, I'm recommending a name change to the Utility Billing Review Committee just to better reflect the function of that committee. Again, there's really no substantive changes to these provisions. It's largely to kind of resort and make it match the format that we have. I took out some superfluous language. So the changes that you see are largely for efficiency and clarity. The only substantive change I made is that the committee would have 7 days following the hearing to issue its decision instead of 2 days. It's a pretty tight turnaround. So it makes it a little more reasonable for staff, frankly. I didn't change anything in the appeals process. So, I don't know if we've had this for a number of years, but city council could still hear an appeal of the Utility Billing Review Committee's decision. And that brings me to the end. Are there any questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Council questions? Councilman Taylor.
Thanks, Emily. When was the last time we kind of had a thorough look at this section of our code and kind of reviewed it like this? Have we done it before? If so, do you know by chance when we did that?
Mayor, Councilmember Taylor, we have done it within each commission, but never before, to my knowledge, have we done a full overhaul of the title.
Thank you. Follow up, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Taylor.
This made some feedback. First off, when I first opened the file and saw all the red lines, I quickly closed it to prepare myself for actually diving into it. But what I found as I went through it, really appreciated how you've reorganized it. I think it's more readable. I like how you've eliminated a lot of the redundant language, kind of cleaned it up. I think it's more approachable as much as we can possibly make it. So I do appreciate that. Really appreciate the change where we're asking the commissions to advise as opposed to promoting certain activities. I think by doing that and by eliminating some of the tasks we're asking them to do, we're actually giving the committee members a little bit more freedom to say, well, instead of doing this task, I'm asked to advise. And I think it'll give us some better feedback potentially from members of the committee that might feel a little bit more free to say, well, here's my advice on how to move ahead, recognizing that they're not to be necessarily promoting or to dictate sort of what the city should be doing. So I think that's good clarity for that. I'll just ask one last question and then that's all I really have. I find it a little odd that we would actually include in their specific meeting times for some of these committees. Is there a statutory reason for that, or is that just best practices?
Mayor, Councilmember Taylor, there is a statutory reason. We're not required to do that, but if we do that, then the regular meetings can be noticed all at once at the beginning of the year. But in order to take advantage of that, I guess, statutory out to having to notice every single time, that the city does have to adopt an ordinance that says this is when the regular meetings will be.
And if the law changes so that we don't have to do the same type of noticing in a different way, maybe that would be something that could be considered in the future. If we didn't want to have a standing time, I think for the purposes of the people on it, they want to know when they're going to meet. That's one of the main questions we always ask. Can you meet at this time regularly? So I don't think we would want to generally change it, but whether or not you want to put it in statute, I think that's a different component. Councilman Whitlock.
Emily, just a quick question on standing committees and the term of appointments at 1 year. The language that says, or the time necessary to achieve the purpose for which the committee is convened. Who determines when they've completed their task? Is it when a recommendation or a report is given to the mayor and council? Is it when it's challenged in court and on that process, or just who determines when they've completed their task? And if there is a challenge or some reason why they need to be reassembled, is there an opportunity to do that if they've been quote unquote dismissed?
Mayor, Councilmember Whitlock, yes, I really hope it's not related to litigation, but the committee does have the districting committee and the compensation committee and the utility billing review committee, they do have a specific task. They're trying to get done one specific thing with a pretty obvious deliverable. So it is that when that deliverable is complete, that is when their appointment would end. And in all of these cases, a year is hopefully way too long, but that does, with the utility billing review committee, that's the one that the year might matter, because anytime within that year, there could be an issue that the committee needs to convene. The other two, it really does depend on how long it takes the process to unfold, and the process is very well defined. So there is a beginning, a middle, and an end. So it's pretty clear when their objective is complete.
Follow up.
Councilman Whitlock.
I guess my frame of reference would be the statewide redistricting committees. No matter what their recommendation is, it always ends up in the Supreme Court. So they get to go back and review it again. And the districting committee and districts in Meridian are fairly new, and who knows what the future holds, challenges to that. So that's why I asked.
Mayor, Councilmember Whitlock, good point. And in that event, I agree that that committee would remain that committee. Those appointments would stay in place until it's all concluded.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
just not a question, but a comment. Remembering back in history when the Transportation Commission started as a traffic safety task force committee, watching all these things evolve over the years, knowing that they all kind of began at different times. I really appreciate the fact that we're taking them all and bringing that high level of consistency to all of them at the same time now. I think it's overdue. I think it's fantastic that we're bringing them all up to speed now. And I appreciate all the hard work. And I'm not used to seeing that much red ink, but I knew it was yours when I saw it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Schrader.
Just kind of a random comment, but I noticed that we will remove commissioners that miss more than 50% of the meetings, and obviously support that, but just want to make sure we're just communicating that the expectation is certainly for them to attend many more on a percentage basis than that. I would hope it would never get to that point. But no, I appreciate all the work on it, and just process wise, I had saw two-step process. We're going to kind of digest this. Should we just provide questions and comments directly to you, Emily, or how do you want us to go about tackling this as we move toward adopting it?
Mayor, Councilmember Strader, certainly I'm open to questions. I could either collect them and return, or I think that's probably the best way, to collect them up and prepare responses and return with the Q&A session.
Yeah, that was going to be the impression. This was an overview. If you have any questions in advance, get them to her. Otherwise, we'll schedule Amy to come back at her earliest convenience, but after you've had time to digest. So minimum, you won't see her at least for 2 weeks, but we'll find the time that works after that. But she'll come back and we're gonna bring back anything. Then after that, in theory, that's when we would say, okay, we'll move this forward for public process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, up next, item 1070, revenue sources discussion.
Mr. Mayor, council members, appreciate the time to present to you. As the slide says, what are our revenue sources? This is an informational presentation, not looking for direction. Again, happy to answer any questions for you. Working with Mr. Kavanagh, this is kind of an attempt to bring content that we manage on your behalf on the executive branch to the legislative branch and the citizens, so you can ask any questions about how we look at finances. In this particular case, back in November, I presented Property Tax 101. So again, this is just kind of a building of that opportunity for us to stand in front of you and kind of talk about what we do. So today is going to be, what are the revenue sources for the city of Meridian? After this presentation, starting on Monday, you'll start receiving an email informational series that's going to bring all this content into, I hate to tell you, 9 different emails, but I'm trying to put it in small little bites so you can store it away. So when you're bored one day, you can open it up and read it. But again, 9 emails will support this document. We do it every year so that you have the information at your fingertips of how we look at finances. So with that, we run 2 major revenue sources here at the city of Meridian, the general fund and the enterprise fund. Within each fund, we separate into what we call ongoing and one-time. And for this presentation here, I'll split the presentation into general fund. I'll talk about ongoings and one-times, and I'll talk about the enterprise fund, ongoing and one-times in detail for this presentation. Just as a general definition of what a ongoing revenue source is in our perspective and how we manage your finances. Again, it's revenue received from a guaranteed agreement, contract, or state law, or services of income not driven by customer use that is dictated or for an indefinite period beyond annual appropriations. So again, we're looking for things that we know that are solid, that we know we can rely on, that we know that will be there, and we consider those ongoing. The one time will be the revenues received from non-guaranteed agreements, contracts, or state law or customer use driven, with the one exception of water and sewer sales. Water and sewer sales is a driven component revenue source by our consumers, but we don't consider that as a one-time. We consider that as an ongoing because of the consistency and the reliability of water and sewer sales, as opposed to softball tournament sales. Again, those can just kind of stop for a whatever reason. Homes usually don't get up and walk and leave. Usually our homes are there, they're moving water, they're receiving water. So that's the one exception we do consider in ongoing that we still say is sales-based, customer-driven. So that is how we define ongoing versus one-time. So with that, we'll jump into the general fund data, discussion. Note that all the numbers in this presentation are fiscal year 24 actuals. So we're just using the most recent data just for a presentation purpose only, but the data that is shown to you is 2024 actual data. So this general fund generated $101 million in fiscal year 2024. Again, the audit report will come out in February and March, but again, that is what we ended the fiscal year at for fiscal 24. We separate this into 2 funds or 2 sources, just like we talked about, ongoing and one-time. In this case, the ongoing revenues for the general fund were 65.7 million and the one-time were 35.3 million. So again, when we dive into the 65 million, we'll go ahead and show you what the primary revenue sources are for this bucket. As you would guess, 65 million is made up by, majority of it is made up by property taxes, state liquor revenues, state sales tax revenue sharing, and franchise fees. When you put those 4 buckets inside of our ongoing, that is what makes up our ongoing revenue sources. That's our most reliable sources of income. And we put those into effect to pay what we call our base revenue expenses. I'm going to talk about each one of these a little bit more in detail. Again, this was presented to you back in November. I'll probably quickly go over property taxes. I've already done property tax 101, but again, it is comprised of 4 functions. We have the base property taxes, allowable property taxes, new construction, new annexation, And again, what's missing from here is that new little thing that we added this fiscal year budget. Again, I didn't add it in here because it's 24 actuals, but 25, we did add a new bubble called foregone. But again, I did not present that here because this is 24 actuals, because I wanted to show you what the revenues look like when you put it in the correct buckets. We did not have foregone in 24. But again, those are the revenue sources for fiscal 24. Your base property tax is almost 46 million. We elected for $735,000 in new allowable taxes. New construction by Ada County provided us 1.5, and new annexation for 57, for a total revenue source for property taxes of $48.2 million. So again, quickly went over that because we had property tax 101 back in November. Again, this is what allowable increases we've done over time, which again, we've shown you in the past. You can see that last column is 2024, which is that $700,000 number. Then we get into the new annexation for the, or actually, I apologize. This is our 3% decision-making opportunity. So this is where council gets to decide, do you take 3%, not 3%? So you can see back since 2004 to 2024, you know, how many times we've taken the full 3%, that would be the bar all the way to the top. And then you can see what we've done recently. So those are our allowable decisions that the city council has made over the years. This is the new construction. This is where Ada County tells us how much new construction revenues we can add to our budget. Again, our peak was in 2020 when we had $2.6 million of new revenues that we could allocate to you to spend on new things. The most recent completed fiscal year 2024 is 1.5 million. And I just want to make a note that if you notice a little trend here, the sliding is going downwards. Again, we're still growing. We're just growing at a declining rate, but just please note that since 2020, the new construction revenues are going down. We finished 2024 with 1.5 million. And if I recall correctly, 2025's budget is right around 1.3 million. So again, it's going on a downward trend. But that's property tax 101, or property taxes. Again, didn't want to spend too much time on that since I presented that in November. The next major revenue source in an ongoing function for the general fund is state liquor. There is a state code that mandates how this works. Again, we are a recipient of the state code. They have the opportunity to provide us revenue sharing within the liquor sales that they manage, and we are a recipient of that. We really have no input on how this works. We have influence at the state level. We can influence them how decisions are made. But the state mandates how this is managed. They collect all the revenues. And then during the quarter, they will determine how much is distributed to the city of Meridian and all other agencies within the state. But they control this. They manage this. We are a recipient of this. Again, just want to point out in 2021, there was a state law change. And they changed the way they calculated revenue sharing. And unfortunately, you can see a new trend is occurring. The last 3 years, we're averaging $51,000 of new revenue sources I get to provide to you. So you get 51,000 new dollars every year. Last year, we actually lost money. If you're just looking for a year-over-year change, as compared to the previous 4 or 5 years to the law change, we're getting $170,000 of new monies every single year. So unfortunately, it's a new direction that we're managing. We had 170, now we're at about 51,000 of new money. So when I present to you your 26 budget, you probably expect about $51,000 of me giving you new monies to spend at your decision-making. But again, the trend is now on the lower side as of before the loss change. So we're collecting less revenues on an annual basis for new monies.
Council Administrator.
Oh, I apologize.
Is it okay if we ask a couple quick questions
Jump in
as
there,
we go, or do
please.
you want us to wait? Okay.
No, jump in. This
If
is,
you don't mind going back to the new construction, because I think this is an important point. Yeah, the new construction revenue slide. Just curious if you, and I think some of us that are talking to you on a regular basis are kind of deeply entrenched in it, but maybe if you could just preview, what do the quarterly results look like in terms of new construction, in terms of the activity that we're seeing? Does it still follow this trend? Because the last full year you have is 24, right? We're already kind of, I mean, it's early in 25, I guess. Do we have any indication just so far how it's going? Is this backward looking at all? Is it, just give us a sense of what you're seeing in terms of the trend. So how much is it kind of on average declining from your perspective?
Nope, we can definitely update. So, the payment method for this is actually annual, but what we do get to use is our new permitting and new development activity. That is how they determine new construction. So, example A, they do our tax bill, figure it out, and then we open up bank number A down the street. That is now new construction that was not previously on that tax bill. So they're saying, you need to add this to your functional tax situation because that's new. So we get to use development numbers to keep track of this. And to answer the question, is it still sliding? I sent you an email before this about your Q1 revenue results. And in there, you'll see that our permitting activity is below or behind our Q1 estimates. So with that, I would say that using that data, our Q1 estimates, I would say that the sliding growth pattern, we're growing at a declining rate, but still stay intact. So we are estimating that 2026's budget will be $996,000 as opposed to 1.3. We're looking at about a $300,000 reduction every single year over the last 4 years. And we don't see any difference from that using our Q1 development results right now. So I don't see anything deviating. But you have a comment, Mayor?
Oh, yeah, and I guess on the Q1, just from when I looked at that information, it looks like the way you divide it is you take, here's what we expect for the year, and here's where we were compared to divide that into 4 equal parts. That's how I interpreted the Q1, because I thought the number that you showed we were below
Or development?
for the development was 1/4,
Or
not
the permit activity.
the permit activity.
I just take it divided by 12. I apologize.
Yeah, in that context.
Yes.
But it's also during the part of time when people aren't doing development. Generally, not entirely, it slows down during this time frame, and it may or may not be reflective. I'm not going to speak to the $300,000, but that Q1, I don't think it's a projection unless you compare it against the previous Q1s to have it maybe an idea. I think that's what you'd want to go back and look at to maybe have your own determination about the year, because most of the activity actually comes in Q3, 2 and 3 on at least 3.
Could we add a seasonality approach to it? We can do that for you.
Yeah.
That way, if it makes it feel better or that makes it look more accurate, happy to do that.
Just for comparison purposes.
Happy to do that.
Compared to
Yeah.
the winter months when people aren't pulling permits
Happy to do that for you.
as much.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilwoman Schrader.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It would be interesting to maybe look on it on that basis as well. Couldn't hurt to get a little, few different viewpoints on it for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Todd.
Nope, thank you. I think we left off on state liquor. So the next major ongoing revenue source for the general fund is called
And
state sales tax.
If
Sorry, I
I could,
apologize.
well, just general comment on liquor, and I think
Okay.
at least from the national articles that some of us have probably seen, the drop off in liquor from the pandemic is huge. The amount that was purchased in 2020, 2021, there's a nationwide hangover on amount of liquor being purchased, wine and liquor specifically, at least the articles that I've seen. So I think that's just a national trend that is occurring, and brown liquor specifically is not moving like it once did. And it's been over produced. At least that's what I've seen in the national documents. So.
Sure.
Councilman Wilk,
My stash is still untouched.
I assumed.
Right.
Todd, I've been involved with state government for 30 years, and honestly, I have to plead ignorance on liquor tax distributions. How do they factor Meridian's distribution? Based on consumption? Is it based on sales? Is it based on some other activity that they can say? Because 50% of what remains after the surcharges goes out to cities and local jurisdictions. 50% of what remains after the surcharge goes to community colleges and other sources. Is it just a wild guess what we're going to get, or is there an actual distribution formula that we?
Great question, Mr. Rollick. There is a formula. I don't want to get you nauseated if I go through 23 of these slides, but I do have at the very end, there is a mathematical formula that the state of Idaho manages, but it's out of our hands. I mean, I can quickly read it to you. It's, I mean, not read, but state liquor distribution, 50%, no, I'm not going to get into it, but there is a mathematical, I'm happy to give you this. I have it in the slides. I'll present it to you guys. But there is a formula to it.
Is it based upon population at the end? A population of what the areas are? We know it gets divided up, but ultimately what's our share of what comes to the cities? Is it number of permits or population or something completely else?
Well, here we go. I'll start confusing you right now. First, the account pays for the operating expense of the state liquor division. Done. Then 50% is allocated to the state, specifically the substance abuse treatment account of 2.8 million. Then the community college account. So then they have this, they hit these things first. Like Doug's like, yeah, it's complicated. And then you get into the remaining 50 is split 49% in the counties, 36% to the magistrate court, then 15% into the fiscal year 2023 funding. And then 90%. I mean, so you can see it's complicated, but I have it all. I put it in these presentations. So when I did get the question, I go, here.
I think just get down to the last line. How is it divided once it gets to the cities? Is it, you know, with one,
Okay, 10% is distributed to the cities without liquor. So that's 90% is distributed to the cities with liquor stores or distribution stations within city limits, according to the city's proportionate share of statewide liquor sales. If that makes sense.
to a government guys, probably so.
Right. Yeah. Black box. Yeah.
And follow up.
Councilman Whitlock.
This slide, can you just explain the negative 57,000 one more time to me?
Those are the actual results we see from the state. Again, they determine how much money they collect and they determine how much money is distributed to us. They're telling us that year over year, they collected less revenues for our proportionate share than in 23. So this is telling you that in 23, if we collected 10 million, in 24, we collected 9,900,000 and something. They determined that for us. We just get a quarterly payment. Yeah. But that's what that's telling you is that for whatever reason, 24 collected less revenues, our proportionate share in 23.
Okay.
Yeah. And our forecast is flat. And that is the recommendation from the state. When we get our quarterly payments, they give a recommendation. They say, just keep it flat. Don't expect anything more or less. We call 50 grand in the hole. We call that flat. Yeah. Stumble past that. I apologize. I don't know everything about the state liquor program and how it all mathematically works. I guess I know enough to be dangerous. Don't worry. This one's even more complicated. So don't ask again. I can try to answer it, but the state again controls revenue sharing for the city, for all the municipalities and agencies in the state of Idaho. We are a recipient. Again, we're happy to be a recipient to collect the funds. But the revenue sharing for sales tax is mandated and controlled by the state of Idaho. They collect all of this, just like in 2021's liquor. They did a sales tax adjustment in 2021 as well. And you can see that we had a one-time bump in 21, which we received gladly. But you can see the new trend for the city of Meridian is now not as well as it once was. So back before the change, we're earning about $739,000 of new revenues I got to provide to you to spend. Our new number is $280,000. So we now are going to project, here's $280,000 more for 2026. How would you like to spend that? As compared to the old number was 739. So again, this is all controlled by the state of Idaho. We are a recipient.
And if I could just on this one, this is one that is still changing every year because how the law is set up, it's a moving target number that we're working towards other cities. So it can there's nothing to say that next year we couldn't get 3.7 million again based upon how the formula is evolving for every city under the formula, but you don't know that in advance, unfortunately. So, yay.
Okay. Yeah, we'll use the data that we have. Right now, we're going to use our last 3 years as our guiding principle of how we forecast for this particular revenue source. Our last major revenue source for the ongoing side for the general fund is what we call franchise fees. The state of Idaho does provide the agencies, the municipalities, an opportunity to charge customers a fee for providing access to our power, natural gas, and telecommunications for our companies. Again, if you wish to read the code, it's in 5329. We do, here at the city, impose 3 different franchise fees, one for Intermountain Gas, one for cable or internet connectivity, and the other one is for electricity. So we collect about 1% from Idaho Power, 5% from, in this case, Sparklight, and then 3% from Intermountain Gas. We do have long-term franchise agreements with these agencies. Again, kind of like the revenue sharing. Franchises, in this case, Idaho Power and Mountain Gas, Sparklight, they control everything. They do all the billing, they do all the collection, they all the charging. We are a recipient of some payment on a quarterly basis. We do not have rights to their financial books. We cannot audit their books. We cannot question whether or not they are charging Mr. Kavanagh right or Mr. Overton right. Again, we are a recipient. Again, don't have a lot of power here. Again, we'll take that. It's an opportunity for us, and we do manage it accordingly. But again, we don't have a lot of input onto this other than please collect 3%, 5%, 1%. We can't audit their books to see if it's really occurring. I trust it is 100% occurring. I trust them. But you can see here, last year, again, Mr. Whitlock, like the other one, we lost money year over year. Why? Not sure. I'm thinking they may have overcharged us in 23 and they finally corrected their books in 24. But I don't have the right to call them and say, give me all your financials. I want to audit your books completely to figure out why I only collected why I collected 216,000 less than I did the year before.
Mr. Mayor,
That's one straighter.
if you don't mind going back one slide. So I'm trying to remember the last time we did this, the Idaho Power one, I think was pretty recent. How do we compare in terms of the franchise fees that we charge compared to other cities? Is it just a straight percentage based on Idaho law, or is there some flexibility? And this could be a follow-up. I'm just curious, just because I noticed that we do have, it looks like one agreement that is up for renewal in 2026 and one in 2027. So it would be good for us to get our arms around that.
Fair question. We can look and see if it's an up to, or is it a flat 1, 3, and 5? Yeah.
Thank you.
Fair question. So for the ongoing revenue sources for the general fund, again, we finished the fiscal year we had less new monies in 2024 than we did in 2023 for X reason. Again, not exactly sure why. Again, we don't get to audit their books. You can see in 2018, 2019, we lost money 2 years in a row. So again, not really sure why. I mean, again, the cable video Sparklight makes sense. If you look at our trend, that one's going down, 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 down every year because we're not using cable anymore. We're using internet providers by TDS or other companies, Google Fiber and things like that. So, and we don't have franchise agreements with them. So we're having less cable users and more streaming users, if that makes sense. So less people signed up for Sparklight cable, but you're using TDS or other internet providers to get your content to your house. So we're showing a trend in cable revenues year over year, which will be displayed in your annual revenue report in April. Luke, I see a possible question. I see the mind turning.
Mr. Mayor, I'll wait till the end of
Okay.
the voice presentation.
Cool. So with that, those are the 4 major ongoing revenue sources for the general fund. So if we kind of put this in a bucket, the far left one is your lever that you get to pull. The other ones, you don't pull any levers, you don't turn any knobs. It's whatever they determine is the number for you. Those are the actual revenue sources that we collected on an annual basis. If you want to know what the new portion, as I talked to you about it, new 3% was 735,000. The liquor, we lost 57 grand. The sales tax, we earned 188 year over year. In addition to franchise, we lost 216, and property taxes was 1.5 positive. So when you add up all that new revenue of that 48 million, or that number right there, $2.2 million is what you got new. So that is the new monies you got to kind of manage accordingly for fiscal year 2024. And then we do this every single year. We say this is how much new revenue you have this year to hire a firefighter, hire a policeman, So that is the number for fiscal year 24. And that's how we manage our finances for ongoing revenues. You know, I'm looking at the clock. I've got we're down to 20 minutes. So I'm going to try to go through this so you guys can go get some dinner and make this happen. These are all the one-time revenue sources that the general fund manages. We manage licenses and permits, intergovernmental. That big number is mostly grant dollars. Fines and forfeitures, charges for service. That's going to be your parks and recreation, going to the home court, football, baseball, things like that. Interest income, that's our investment. That's what we're earning on our investments that we manage. And then impact fees are restricted, building permits, that's our community development, and then planning fees is your planning fees. So those are your one-time revenue sources. We manage these separately from what we call our ongoing expenses. So we do not depend on these expenses to pay for your ongoing expenses. And that's how we kind of divide up your expenses as well, along with the revenue. Lots of information. I apologize. That's why we put this in 9 emails later on. So again, enterprise fund. Same concept. They generated 56 million. These numbers, again, as a reminder, are fiscal 24 actuals. We separate them into 2 buckets, no different than the general fund. 33 million in ongoing and 22 million in one-times. They have 3 major buckets for their 33 million. Water sales, you know, what people use in water, sewer sales, what we collect from the houses, and then our trash billing services. Those 3 components make up our major ongoing revenue sources for the city. I'm not going to explain what this is. This is, again, for the citizens as well. This is how it works. We put the water in, collect the money. Again, that's just an informational slide. This is your revenues, new revenues year over year for your water and sewer sales. Again, we are averaging about, over the last 3 years, $1.3 million of new revenues that we get to manage accordingly for the enterprise fund. Again, they are driven by our customers, and as you know, the city is growing with customers. So again, revenue should naturally increase as we get, 2,000 new homes every single year type of thing. Next item is trash billing services. You've had some conversations about this with the Republic Services. Again, we collect 6% of the billings that we manage on their behalf. So we do that per the contract, and these are the new revenues that we collect for the utility billing, and it's about $113,000 over the last 3 years of new revenues because they've added new customers, and we get 6% of all new sales for customers. So it's just mathematically, you can see we're averaging about $100,000 to $113,000 of new revenues to the enterprise ongoing revenue source. And those are the 3 major ongoing revenue sources that we manage for the enterprise fund. Everything else of the 22 million is what we consider one-time in nature. We sell water meters. Again, that's one time in nature. It's not ongoing, so it's one time. Engineering fees, miscellaneous fees, going to be grants and such. Interest income, the EPA compliance will disappear. That's sunsetted, so you will not see that one going forward. And the connections of water and sewer. And those are what we consider our one-time revenue sources that we use for one-time expense sources. And with that, got that done, 20 minutes left. I'm happy to stand or sit for any questions. Again, we will present this in 9 emails so that you have it, so that you can share it with whoever you wish. We send it to all the directors. We send it to the council so that they can share with all their employees as well, so that everyone has a general understanding of how we manage your finances here at the City of Meridian. I appreciate it.
Council questions.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Taylor.
quick comment and then a question. You and Homer Simpson look a lot alike when you have your glasses on. So
Well, thank you, Doug.
That's why you put it in your presentation. On franchise fees,
Sure.
you can just talk to me for a second. They're not, trying to understand what level they are, required by the city to people versus like the different entities out there. Let's use cable, for example. I was just thinking as you were talking,
Yeah.
there's other cable providers who aren't collecting franchise fees, or I guess I'm just trying to understand a little bit of background about franchise fees in terms of how do we come down deciding who's going to be signing these contracts with us to do that? Is this just completely
Fair question.
objective to what the city wants to do, or?
We did just sign one with TDS. So I know TDS is a new provider in our valley.
Okay, but do we require, if it's a new provider, do we require them? Is this something that we mutually say, hey, let's talk about this?
Great question. These were all developed before I was here, and other than TDS, Bill, I mean, maybe you have some historical, if not, again, we can research this. I'm not sure how that works. That's a great question.
Mr. Mayor, a quick follow-up if I may.
Councilman Taylor.
I'm just trying to understand, as other potential providers of these services are in the city of Meridian, are they required to come to us to sign a contract? Can they just go out and provide it? Because I'm just trying to understand,
Sure.
is this just another way to collect some revenue? Is this offsetting some impacts to the city services in some way? Maybe this is a broader discussion at another time, sounds like, on franchise fees, so.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of council, I can give you kind of a 2-minute version. So previously, historically, yes, all providers of both cable services, power, gas, all had to get franchise agreements to basically use the streets as a means of their conveyance. Over-the-air providers, again, don't use streets, so they don't have the same requirements. But the state, a number of years ago, created a statewide franchise to get out of the business of every individual city having a different franchise agreement, different amounts, different reasons, different requirements. So now it's governed by the PUC and the state. So we get a portion, and which is why I think the revenue amount has changed. We get a proportion dependent on the state formula that's governed by the PUC. So we don't have any individual ones anymore. We had this issue with cable last year where our requirements changed because of that. Same thing with, we still have them, I think, with Intermountain Gas and Idaho Power. But the other ones, yeah, the state supervises those.
And there is some variability. The state can be up to 3%, or the Idaho Power can be up to 3%. So why was 1% selected back in 2008? I was here. I don't recall this conversation in that context, but so there is a little bit of decision point that the city has if they are to have these.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Caffrey.
council get a chance for dinner, so thanks, Todd, for doing this. Mayor, maybe a request is a good conversation with you and our CFO and maybe our comms manager. This is beneficial to the council, but I think it's also equally important that we are proactively communicating that to our citizens. So perhaps there's a spot on our website where we could post this, promote this, the series that Todd is going through. And I think emails that outline this for council is also beneficial for the public. I recognize when Mr. Lavoy gave his presentation, he wasn't intending for it necessarily to be saved on YouTube in time and forever. So if we want to work to find a way to maybe to do those, I think it could be beneficial for not only the public, but for me, late at night at 3 a.m. when I'm trying to remember something that he went over, to be able to go back and recall it is also helpful. So just food for thought as we continue to do these.
Council, any additional questions or comments at this time? All right. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mayor,
Councilman Cameron.
during the workshop.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Council will call this meeting to order. For the record, it is January 28, 2025 at 6:02 PM. We'll begin tonight's regular city council meeting with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Cavanagh, Councilwoman Little Roberts, Councilman Taylor, Councilman Overton, Councilman Whitlock, Councilwoman Strader, Mayor Simonson.
Here. Next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd all please rise and join us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight's community invocation will be delivered by Pastor Troy J. If you'd please join us in the community invocation and take this a moment of silence and reflection. And Pastor, thank you for being here because it would have been really awkward if I would have called up the first applicant if you weren't here to lead us. So.
Okay. My pleasure, Mr. Mayor and council members. Would you join me in a word of prayer? Well, Lord God, we just thank you that we can be here this evening, that you've given us life, and we have the freedom here in our country and in this city, this state. We appreciate those things so much. God, before I forget, I just want to lift up the Plimmer family. I know that there's been a death in the family, and they came before the council just recently to have something approved. And so we just pray that you would comfort the family. You're the great comforter. And so you know what they need. And I just pray that they would seek you and that you would come alongside them. And God, of course, we're also just praying for our community here this evening, the first responders. We appreciate them keeping us safe and helping in those areas of trouble. So we pray for them that they would just have the the ability to protect the citizens. And God, we also lift up those who are homeless, and that they can find shelter, that someone would open their heart and home to them so that they wouldn't be on the street. They can be fed, Lord. It's freezing out. We just pray, and our heart breaks for those who are fearful in that kind of a place. And of course, God, we're here for the council meeting. And so I just pray for everything that goes on in this building. God, you just reminded me in Romans where it says that the governing authorities are appointed by you, and they're for good. And so I just thank you for the people in this building that are doing good for the citizens. And I just, lastly, God, pray for our mayor and our council members that they would just have an extra measure of wisdom so that they could make the right decisions for the citizens here in Meridian. And so we just give that all to you, God, and it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Council, up is the adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
changes this evening, so I move we adopt tonight's agenda as presented.
Second?
I have a motion, a second, to adopt the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the agenda is agreed to. Ms. Clerk, you want to send up under public forum?
Mr. Mayor, nobody signed up.
Councilman Overton.
Mayor, council, members of the public. A week ago in this very room, it was full. It was not full of people for a development. It was not full of people for or against. It was for people supporting a project. In addition, it was a ninja course that was going to be added to Discovery Park. The whole reason that course came to be and be in front of us was a young girl. And her name was Eva Plimmer. And she sat right here in this front row. Just a few days later, she passed. young girl passed way before her time. I just want to take just a couple minutes to recognize the fact that there is no age limit on being a champion in your community. And she will forever be remembered as a champion in this community, even if we've had to lose her at such a short time. So thank you for letting me have a minute that I could get through those words. But every day's a gift. We need to remember that as we go through life. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Overton.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Taylor.
I appreciate the words from Councilman Overton. I think those of us who have children were kind of impacted us a lot more than maybe we thought it would with that news. First, I just want to appreciate your leadership, Mayor and Councilman Cavanagh, for making sure that we could have the opportunity to weigh in on a project and to see a little girl's dream, what she envisioned kind of come to fruition not long before she passed away. And it made me reflect a little bit on when we have these tender mercies from God in our life that allow us a moment to pause and reflect and to feel a little bit uplifted and to feel a little bit encouraged that the world's not a bad place, that there's a lot of really good things. And I just want to share a brief passage from Psalms. Withhold not thou thy tender mercies from me, O Lord. Let thy loving kindness and thy truth continually preserve me. And I think about that, and I think that we witnessed a small tender mercy for all those of us on city council in the city, those that came. But I think the project will be a tender mercy and a continual reminder of a very, very good thing. And so I just really appreciate the opportunity we had to do that and extend our condolences to the family.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Whitlock.
I echo Councilman Taylor's appreciation for you taking a lead on this and for the council stepping up and doing what needed to be done. I went home after last Tuesday's meeting and I Googled Ninja Warrior. And you know, it says it's a reality show. And it's where athletes tackle America's most challenging obstacles. I think what we witnessed last week was a little girl and her family tackling life's most difficult obstacles. And we saw a family and a little girl that did it with faith and perseverance and togetherness. The room was packed with supporters. And honestly, as I watched Eva and went home that night and contemplated what this council had done, I had a desire to become a person more like Eva, somebody who looks outwardly rather than inwardly, despite all the pain that she experienced. So I'm proud of the way that the community responded and stepped up to help this amazing young woman's dream come true. And I think when that Ninja Warrior course is built, it will be a legacy and a testament to the little girl and her family who dreamed a dream that became a reality. So thank you, Mayor.
Well, I appreciate the community giving council an opportunity to say a few words. And I just want to extend condolences to the family. Services will be held this week. And honestly, but I know we're here and talking about this, but we lost two great Evas this last year. You know, one much more in her age, but devotion to community was nonetheless in that context. And so maybe there's something in that name that just rings true. But both big losses, but this one is especially here and now for many. And I know it'll be a packed house on Friday as people come together to celebrate this young girl's life. And so to the family on behalf of the city, our condolences are with you and may she rest in peace. With that, we will move on to our action items for this evening. First item up is final plat for Stonehill Crossing subdivision, FP 2024-0020. And we will open this public hearing. I know that's what we'll hear from staff on this item.
I just turned it on. Thank you, Dean. Hate it when that happens. Council continued this item from last Tuesday's meeting in order to receive testimony from ACHD on the proposed private access to the existing residence on Lot 2 through the church property on Lot 1. Since the last meeting, the applicant submitted concept plans showing how temporary access is proposed to the existing home through the church property, and that is at the upper left-hand drawing there, and how future access could be provided upon redevelopment of the lot through the property to the east once it redevelops, and that is on the drawing on the left-hand side on the bottom. The applicant is requesting a revised change from that they were proposing last week to condition number 10, which requires the ingress egress easement on the church property on Lot 1 for the benefit of the existing home on Lot 2 to be temporary until such time as the adjacent property to the east redevelops and an alternate access is available. At that time, the access easement would terminate and the driveway on the church property would be removed. The applicant's proposed change would allow the existing home to retain access through the church property until such time as the lot redevelops in the future. At such time, the easement would terminate and access would be provided from the alternate accesses shown on the right. So the concept drawings on the right show how access could be provided to that lot and how future development of that lot could occur. Doesn't mean it will, it's just some concept drawings of how it could. Staff has included the verbiage that the applicant is requesting changes to that condition on your hearing outline tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions for staff? I assume we want to hear from the applicant? Yeah, would the applicant like to come forward to make any comments?
All right. Well, thank you guys for allowing us the opportunity to present. I also just really quickly want to say I'm friends with the plumbers and I just appreciate what you guys did. That's huge. I wasn't able to be here last week, but it meant a lot. So thank you for as well. Just real quick, we've been worked hard to be compliant. I'm sorry, Doug Connolly. And I have Brian Appleby, who is our civil engineer. So as Sonia already expressed it, you know, we've been working hard to try to figure this out and get it going. And she did a great job of explaining kind of where we're at right now, where we're at. I just want to make sure that there's clarity in this. And so Exhibit 1, I think that's on the screen right now, shows the realigned Mills driveway and was already proposed and recommended for temporary approval for the city planning. And then the second slide is the one where the alternative future driveway access based on the city's current recommendations, condition number 10 for change of location upon development of the property to the east. And so what we're doing is we're recommending that this change not be required as long as the Mills residence remains unchanged or not redeveloped. And the reasons why, just real quick, the topography is challenging, 6.5 foot elevation difference, and the slope is 9%. The driveway would be less direct route to the existing garage that you see there. And then the driveway pavement would be excessively wide with a transition from the road stub to the existing circular driveway. And so it's just not ideal for them currently. And so our proposal, as she said before, is to allow temporary access to the property until redevelopment happens. And that would give us access for the Mills and the current residents. And so, again, she already showed the possibilities. I don't know if we need to go over that again unless you want to, but just what it could be once it's redeveloped. And so really ultimately just the current wording, just to make sure it's clear on what we're asking. The current number 10 condition wording is the ingress egress easement depicted on Lot 1, Block 1 for the benefit of Lot 2. Block 1 shall be temporary until time as the alternate access is available for Lot 2 with development of the adjacent property. At such time, the access easement shall terminate and the driveway on lot 2 via lot 1 shall be removed. And so what I want to do you have the slide of the change that we want to make? The proposed condition number 10 wording then would basically be the same, but we would add, so the ingress egress easement depicted on lot 1, block 1 for the benefit of lot 2. Block 1 shall be temporary until such time as an alternate access is available for lot 2 with the development of the adjacent property. And here's where the change is. To the east of lot 2, block 1 and lot 2, block 1 is redeveloped, e.g. residence is torn down, replaced by a new single-family residence or further subdivided. At such time, the access easement shall terminate and the driveway on lot 2 via lot 1 shall be removed. And so really that's what we're asking for tonight for that change. So.
Thank you. Council, questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
no, we don't have a public hearing. Some of my questions and confusion was about, again, some of the testimony we heard last night. It was uncertain if the temporary would go away with redevelopment, and so I think getting some clarity on that, to me, at least satisfied what my concerns were. Unless there's any deliberation, I'm happy to make a motion for council. Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Cavanagh.
I move that we approve item number 1. It's the final plat for Stonehill Crossing subdivision, application FP 2024-0020, as presented this evening.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schrader.
I just wanted to check if the condition 10 had been updated by staff, or does the motion need to reflect the additional language that the applicant just presented?
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman Strader, yes, the motion should include the requested language by the applicant if you're in agreement with that.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
apologies that my intention was with that is because it was presented this evening that was inclusive of the changes from the applicant. But happy to let my record reflect that my motion was to be inclusive of that as well. Thank you, Councilmember Strader, for flagging that.
Second concurs.
And a second concurs, so I think we at least have a path. Everyone understands what we're considering. Is there discussion? If not, clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cavanagh.
Aye.
Little Roberts.
Aye.
Taylor.
Aye.
Overton.
Aye.
Strader.
Aye.
Whitlock.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carries. The item is agreed to. Thank you very much. I did see a lot of green pipe out there around that property. Anything to do with your project? Okay. Okay. Fair enough. With that, we'll move on to item 2, which is public hearing continued from January 14, 2025 for 3970 East Overland Road, H 2024-0053. Continue this public hearing with staff comments.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
before staff gives their comments, I just want to say I was not here for the January 14th hearing, but I have been able to review the entire event and am prepared to make comments this evening.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this application was asked to be continued for additional input from all council members. Staff hasn't changed anything regarding their presentation for this annexation of this property into the city. But the applicant did put together some information that they would like to share with you prior to your deliberation. They'd like to provide some additional clarity for you.
Have any questions for staff before we bring up the applicant? Okay, if the applicant would like to come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Jared Walgren with JGT Architecture at 1135 12th Avenue Road in Nampa. That has that presentation available. that's something I can control from here. Perfect. So I'm representing the applicant for this request that is to annex an existing parcel along Overland and Topaz into the city as a CG zone. We're also requesting a waiver on the required buffer from 25 feet down to 15 feet. It's proposed to be a 4,900 square foot building. Most of it will be for a Vietnamese restaurant that will be owned and operated by the applicant. Last time, there was some potential opposition expressed by a few members. And from what I could tell, nobody really had an issue with the use or the design per se, or the buffer. It was just really more of the process by which, you know, you'd approve such a small parcel into an area. And so we really haven't changed anything about the site other than we have formalized this potential future access to the north, which we had as a garbage truck backup area. We've widened that out to be a future access to the north. We thought that was a good idea. And I guess I'm hoping we can kind of talk about the context of the area to illustrate how this property could develop in the future to be cohesive with its surroundings. The elevations have remained unchanged. It'll be a nice, attractive building that will work with staff in design review and CZC to ensure that it meets city requirements. On this side, you can see how the area is developed. We've got an aerial photograph from 1992 contrasted against a present day. And so you can see the nice developments that have occurred in El Dorado and Silverstone and Eagle View Landing were able to be accomplished by the acquisition of these large parcels of land where they could master plan all of that with streets and infrastructure and stratified uses that really make sense. And unfortunately, that's left this, you know, enclaved area here of these old rural residential parcels that they're big enough to develop commercially, but kind of too small to really plan all together. But we think this site right along Overland works well to be annexed in as is and work well with the area. You can see that enclaved area consists of 49 parcels that are currently R1 zone in the county. The city has previously annexed 3 of those properties, Zamzo's being one, which is a CG zone. There's kind of a peculiar sliver here that's an R2 zone annexed into the city. And then the property immediately adjacent to our east is also a CG zone. So this position where we're bounded on one side by Topaz, Overland on the south, and an already annexed parcel really makes a lot of sense to continue this commercial development along the road. You know, if we were talking about one of these parcels further to the north that was deep into the neighborhood, it certainly wouldn't make as much sense to have a restaurant. But in this position, we think it makes perfect sense. It's just another reiteration of the mixed use regional zone future land use for the area, which is intended to provide a mix of employment, retail, residential dwellings, and public uses near major arterial intersections. We feel our project meets those requirements. This is a depiction of the roadways in the area in discussion with ACHD. They have no specific plans in the immediate future. They intend Overland to be widened in like the 2036 capital improvement plan. And they did indicate that the city has a request in for a vision of this view circle street to extend to Topaz down around the corner back to Overland and have a traffic signal at Movado. That would provide some good interconnectivity in the area. And another potential option would be this new intersection where Rolling Hills meets Flatiron. which is currently restricted at those new Aaron apartments due to us presumably limiting large amounts of traffic through this residential street. But one could envision in the future, if this were to develop commercially, that that could be a good access point for interconnectivity. One other piece of background information to note in the area is that 5 Mile Creek does subject a lot of the area to floodplain issues. Our property, the very northeastern corner, has a little bit of floodplain in it, but it is out of our development area, so it doesn't really impact the project. But any, future development to the north will be adversely impacted by floodway, which could create challenges. With that being said, we kind of took a stab at a quick sketch of how these immediately surrounding parcels might develop if we provide that access both to the north and to the east. If that property were to ever develop commercially instead of the contractor's yard, one can envision how each of these parcels could be developed one by one, whether it's, some residential townhouses along the creek, some office buildings. You could see how this area could be connected and provide access to different roads and future roads. Even if you were designing this whole area as a whole, it would be a natural fit to put a commercial restaurant use right along the corner. So we think it's very appropriate. Few background images of the site we can refer to if we need to. There's various uses surrounding and across the street. This image here in the center left is the existing site. And so I guess in conclusion, we're left with the choice of, if we don't annex this parcel, it remains a site with dilapidated buildings, weeds, dying landscape, and as an R1 zone in the county, the only possible development would be for a single family home, which I think we would probably agree that doesn't make any sense along a 5-lane gateway corridor. But if we approve this this evening, be a way to redevelop that property with a nice restaurant to provide a service for the community. I think we can provide some connectivity to surrounding sites that will develop well in the future. And the applicant, everybody he's spoken with is supportive, from his customers to neighbors to his bank. They all think it's a great idea. And I know I live about a mile from here, and my wife and I are always commenting how we could use some more restaurant options. So we'd be excited about this, and think it'd be a great fit for the area. And hopefully, some of the opposition expressed last time, maybe we provided some background information that helps sway you a little bit. And with that, I ask for approval of this project and stand for any questions.
Thank you. Council, any questions?
Mayor?
Councilwoman Strader.
Yeah, if you could go back to the slide where you showed the road network.
Wheel is kind of slow.
Thank you. Yeah, this one. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, and I will just say, this one for me has been tough. I've lost more sleep over this one since our last meeting, so I've been really thinking about it. This is helpful. What is the status of this circle, view circle extension with ACHD? I'm not understanding where we're at as a city with that. You mentioned it was a request from the city. Is it a request to amend the master street map? Maybe this is a question for staff, actually. I think that you could chime in a second, Mr. Mayor, if that's all right with you.
Mayor, members of the council, I think you hit it right on the head. It is a request from the city working in conjunction with ACHD to put a dash line on a piece of property with a vision of a future collector somewhere in this general location. So it's just highlighted on our map. And so when developers come in and ask to us about what's required to develop my property. It starts that discussion, well, we have a dashed line going across your property, so we envision a collector road somewhere in this area as you just pursue development of this property. And typically, anything on the master trees, this type of roadway, the way it's presented on the map is all developer driven. So it's nothing that ACHD builds or the city builds. It's, again, the developer coming forward with their development application and constructing that in accordance with both the city's and ACHD's adopted plans.
Mr. Mayor, follow up.
Councilman Schrader.
And so how do we, because usually we don't see a lot of applications where we're having this kind of back and forth about whether the master street map will be actually updated. Is there any kind of process? Like if we put a condition in, would you recommend that to try to get ACHD to adopt it? Or is there any other action needed on the city's part to try to move that plan forward?
Mayor, members of the council, not really.
Okay.
Again, ACHD's policies don't require it. And then like anything, roadways are widened and constructed based on trips, the volume. So there's mechanisms to warrant certain things under their policies, and something like this would not trigger anything as the applicant has alluded to. So again, with this application, the best thing that we could hope for is there is a plan for the area. We have a mixed use designated on it, mixed use designation on the property. So that means we envision a broad mix of uses on it. We do have some future plans for the extensions of roadways and reclassification of roadways. But again, that will occur as development occurs and as trips and traffic warrants those upgrades or classifications changing, including the signal to Overland Road.
And maybe to piggyback just a little bit, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the project the council recently denied, would it have extended to where View Circle would have started to be constructed or not?
Mayor, members of the council, correct that. So if we head a little bit to the east on the other side of Rolling Hills Drive, that east-west portion where it's labeled View Circle, a portion of that would have been constructed with that project.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Schrader.
This is helpful. And it's funny to focus on this connection to the north is sort of my attempt at trying to future-proof everything, because I felt like, okay, if we created more connectivity, even if this is a small parcel, it creates the potential that there can be a connection as needed. I actually want to compliment you for providing this context, because I think it's very helpful. At least it paints a picture for me that there is a path forward at some point in the future for this area, as opposed to just like an enclave that will always be isolated from the roadway network. That was kind of my fear in our last meeting. So I'll be open. I think I may actually change the direction that I'll vote on this once I have a chance to think about it for a bit. Thank you.
Council, additional questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, do we have anybody signed to provide testimony on this item?
Mr. Mayor, yes. Anita Gallagher.
Good evening. State your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name's Anita Gallagher. I'm at 3825 Onyx Street, which is in the subdivision that he says is depleted houses. Thank you for letting me speak, Mr. Mayor and council. The first question I have is, at that site that he's talking about, is showing everything for the council, 1.12 acres. The for sale sign says 0.78. I don't know where the extra acreage is coming from. I do have pictures of the for sale sign if you want to see. My second question is, there's a project that's going to be coming up across the street on Topaz of the 2 acres, and they want to turn it into 21 apartments plus commercial space. If that's approved, it would affect the access and traffic to Topaz, Onyx, Jade, and Overland with the restaurant and the commercial space. Would this be the similar problem that you brought up at the last meeting over on Eagle and Usteek? That's my question. Thank you.
Council, any questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Taylor?
Thank you. It's a kind of a quick question. My understanding from years past, previous council has attempted to kind of engage some of you and your neighbors on what's the future look like here. You're obviously in a very rapidly developing part of the city. It's kind of feels like the center of the valley in many ways. Could you describe what conversations maybe you have had with any of your neighbors? Like, what do you envision sort of happening here? Or is it just like, leave us alone for a little bit, which I certainly can respect, but I'm just kind of
Just
curious
leave it
what
like that.
some of if you could contextualize a little bit of your conversations about what does the future of this part of the city look like?
We really don't know for sure. I know there have been some people that just have bought the property probably within the last 10 years. And they're really happy with their property. I've been there for almost 26 years. I have an acre. My yard looks like a park. I don't want it to go back, go away. I'm not ready to move. If I have to, I guess I will have to if I can get a good price for my property. But I really don't want to. And I have great, fantastic neighbors. We're a nice little quiet neighborhood. And like over in Rolling Hills, how, everybody knows everybody.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to provide testimony on this item, either in the room or if you're online, you can use the raise your hand function. Seeing no one raising their hand or coming forward, would the applicant like to make any final comments at this time?
Mr. Mayor, Council, in response to the last testimony, I certainly didn't intend to refer to anybody's property as dilapidated other than this specific site. It has what appears to be maybe an old auto service building and really buildings that are completely uninhabitable and unusable. And so without an annexation, that it's a property that just sits there and it really can't have any use that can be done with it. So that's what I meant with that comment. As far as traffic, the one item we did discuss with ACHDs, I mean, they do have the ability to paint some lines along Overland, do not block this intersection lines, which don't exist now. That could be one way to alleviate some of the concerns with the traffic congestion at that intersection. It's kind of with a little bit of hesitancy that I even master plan property like that that's not even part of the project, knowing that there are people that live there, and it's awfully presumptuous to plan on developing something on someone's property that they could want to live there for the next 40 years. And so that's why it's difficult to envision how this area will develop. And I think our one little corner that's tucked up right along Overland works pretty well. So if you have any other questions for me, I'd be glad to take them.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Morgan, appreciate the update in the presentation. Does your client currently own that land?
Not yet, no. He's under contract to purchase.
I do think it is important. Certainly, I think I've got a pretty good sense about where this one is headed, but it'd be my hope that your client takes possession, that he moves rapidly to clean up that area. Certainly it's not your applicant's fault of the current condition, but an annexation into Meridian, we take pride in our community, would hope that he'd move expeditiously. I know sometimes continuances can be hard, and I know we were kind of at a deadlock when you were here last before, so I appreciate your requested continuance and giving you guys an opportunity to come back and give us a little bit more flavor. I didn't recall that your neighbor next to you had already annexed into the city. To me, that's a big difference maker. That plus the connectivity that you've kind of provided with relocating kind of your truck turnaround, I think solves for me some of the bigger concerns that I had about, okay, what is the future of this? And recognizing, I commend you for taking some creativity and say, this is what it could be. You don't want to tell anybody that's what's happening. I appreciate that, but I at least applaud your willingness to say demonstrating how this could potentially work with future development. So to me, that's the big piece is that your client takes ownership, that he moves expeditiously to get that lot cleaned up. But I don't have any additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Councilman Whitlock.
Mr. Walgren, can you, I think this was described as a multi-tenant building with one side being used as a restaurant. Are there plans for the other side or what use that might be?
No specific plans at this point. That would be vacant shell that he would lease out to a potential tenant that would be applicable and complementary to his business, and he would be able to select who that was.
And if we were to follow up,
Councilman Whitlock.
can you just confirm for me, again, you've addressed the cross access to the north, but you've also included cross access to the east. Is that correct?
That is correct. The annexation on the parcel to the east in their development agreement, it did have a condition that if the site were to ever develop into something other than a contractor's yard, that cross access was to be provided to the neighboring parcel. So we are connecting with that location.
Okay, thank you.
Council, any additional questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, council, just for the record, I want to provide some clarification to the resident that asked why the acreage was different than the parcel size. And just for the record, just clarify that when applicants request to annex into the property, we have them go to the center line of the adjacent roadways. So therefore, the annexation boundary is greater than the actual property they're going to develop. So that's why you see that discrepancy. And then also to Councilman Whitlock's question about uses in the development agreement that we have proposed in the staff report, we are eliminating the site to develop with specific uses to try to minimize those impacts to the adjacent residents. And then one last piece of business tonight, if you decide to move forward with the approval, keep in mind that the applicant did request a waiver to reduce that buffer along the north boundary.
So in this case, the property boundary goes to center line of Overland and the center line of Topaz, which is what's giving it that extra dimensional size.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Schrader.
maybe just a quick question for Linda or for Bill. I liked the idea of the do not block this intersection. That seems like it could only help the situation. Is that just a staff level communication? Do we need would we need a provision around that to try to highlight it? Help me understand how we would navigate that component.
Mayor, Councilwoman Strader, we would reach out to ACHD and try to see if we can make that happen. So it would be staff communicating with ACHD on that issue.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
I know we've got a resident who wanted to ask maybe a question. Perhaps maybe staff could follow up with them and get any of the questions they want have answered, unless it's pertaining to the application. And it just, ma'am, if you come up and testify, the applicant will also get another opportunity to provide the last word. And if it pertains to the application that's before us, we're happy to hear. But if you've got more of a structural question, our staff can at least get you dialed in. Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, just because we've got our good stenographer holding us accountable tonight on all things on the record, what I heard was that there's signage there, but that the lines don't exist. And I know that we've got our good colleagues from ACHD that are also on the call hearing this. And so I have great faith that between the great staff at the Highway District and our great staff here at the city, that we'll get this request in to get those lines painted at the Highway District's earliest ability. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'd move that we close the public hearing on item number 2. This is an annexation H-2024-0053.
I have a motion, a second to close the public hearing. Is there discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The public hearing is closed.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
as only one who didn't get to testify 2 weeks ago, if you permit me a few minutes and a little history. I actually watched this twice because it really resonated me a lot on a lot of the comments that were made by my fellow councilmen. But I got to go back in history a little bit. It was about 15 years ago. I was at a training in Cannon County, and I was approached on a break by two members, two elected officials, a city councilman and a commissioner over in Cannon County. And they were commending the city of Meridian, that our previous councils had done a fantastic job of preserving areas of our city for future development, and how we did some of our larger developments because they had not done such a good job, and they had allowed some pockets to be developed that then prevented some of the developers from coming in and putting these master plans together. And it made me pretty proud to know that we had some pretty forward-thinking folks 10, 15 years ago on our city council as we were just deciding what our master plan was. And I can't help but worry about some of the projects like this, that if this was an infill, if this was the end of the development and we already had everything else developed and I was looking at this project coming in, I wouldn't have a problem with it. It'd be a perfect infill project. But the problem I have is it's all open still. You know, when Eagle Franklin, the southeast corner, developed, it took years, but they bought every single house. And if they hadn't have done a master plan project, we wouldn't have St. Luke's Hospital and all the buildings and restaurants that surround that. It was time consuming, it was well laid out, it was well designed. And as a city, we benefited from a great product. The same things happened at Silverstone Plaza. We master planned this into a great commercial corner. We've done this multiple times throughout our city, but if we would have had some of these projects that almost become speed bumps or handicaps to us doing some of those larger products, they wouldn't have happened. And what worries me with this one, because now we've heard there's already another one in the pipeline and we've already approved and annexed land next to it, is we're starting to possibly limit what someone could come in and do as a master plan for this area that would give us that collector street and bring it out to Movado. Because you can put that yellow line on the screen for everybody to see, but it's an imaginary line to me until we get some sort of master plan that comes forward that says, this is what we want to do. That's all it is. And I'm really having a tough time supporting, mind you, successful restaurant, great restaurant. I have no doubt. It's not personal. It's how we preserve some of these areas. This is our one shot on whether we want to try to preserve this corridor for something larger, or if we want to let this establish lot by lot by lot. Because the discussion that happened 2 weeks ago, there was quite a bit that had to do with, we need to have connectivity to the north. We've already got connectivity to the east, but the problem is lot by lot, we have no idea what's going to happen on those lots. So it's impossible for us as a council to say where that connectivity should be and what it's going to go to. Where when we master plan something on a much larger scale, there's an idea of what type of buildings, restaurants, retail, residential that's going to go into those spots. And I just caution all of us as we look at this. This is a pretty unique opportunity for this section of land. We know there's quite a few people here because we've already had one application that are already willing to sell because we've already had an application before us. We turned it down because not everybody was willing to sell, and we created more problems than we fixed with that one. We weren't there yet, but we were darn close. And I'm just afraid that if we approve this, as we continue to approve, we're just handicapping ourselves on how this could eventually redevelop in the future. That's my thoughts.
See no one else jumping in right away. I'll weigh in just briefly on this because I think there's a lot of wisdom in that one, but I also think that there's another side to this equation. I mean, this property is in a, nothing can exist on this property but through redevelopment. Yeah, I don't see how you could do anything here. And the one thing I don't want to do is be in a situation where we tell a property owner they can never do anything with this property. Because let's say they want to come in and put a house on it. Well, is that what we want? We want a house next to a 7-lane road and they want to cook up to water and sewer because that's going to be a requirement. For any development on this property, we're going to tell everyone, you got to come to the city for water and sewer. If this was an inhabitable property that had, some current, what I would say, in my opinion, current value, waiting may be the right decision, but to say that nothing can ever happen here, if that's what the outcome is, I don't know that I'm personally think that that's the best option to tell a property owner or a future property owner. You're just gonna have to leave it the way it is, because we're not gonna let you develop it in the county. And you're gonna come to the city, and when you come to the city, we're gonna want you to develop the way the city wants you to develop it, but you can't do it because nothing else is ready to develop. I see a little bit of a circular challenge with this because of the current state of the property. And I just want to make sure that the property owners have an opportunity to have a livable property, because I think it's the best interest of all of us to have a livable property in this location, not a no one's going to do anything with this property scenario.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Taylor.
there's one thing I've learned, and that's Councilman Overton's got a lot of wisdom and perspective he brings to a lot of the discussion. I really appreciate that. One of my concerns tonight with this is if we decide that it's not appropriate to annex this property, we're effectively setting a precedent where we're going to be saying, to be consistent and fair, this whole property that we're looking at right here, it will not develop until there's a better, more comprehensive plan. And I've gone back and forth on that because we've had a couple of property or projects here in this area, and I think I think that resonates with me on a level. But I also think, the plan is a mixed use development here. So what we're missing is the specifics of what it looks like. Specifics of how each parcel might be connected together. And I recall not too long ago, just a few weeks ago, we looked at a very large development where we had sort of bubble, I think the phrase was a bubble plan, with the details to come in later. And we unanimously approved that because we had a single developer we had confidence would come back with a lot of the specifics. We're missing that here, and I acknowledge that. We're missing that the specifics of interconnecting the parcels. But in my mind, we have a plan. The plan is mixed use. We don't have the details of the plan. So again, it's circular, it's chicken or the egg, what comes first? If this parcel were maybe a quarter of a mile off Overland, if it was tucked back in with the homes, this is a non-starter. I think we clearly know what that would look like. If this was a development much larger with much higher traffic count with maybe a multifamily use, I think our discussion's different. I wish we had a master plan that we could be looking at, but we don't. And I kind of was asking, what do the neighbors want? Next year, neighbor to the east may decide it's time to sell and move on, sell their property. Someone wants to stick around for a while. Others want to leave. You never know. And this is really, really challenging. But to me, I think it's fundamentally unfair to tell someone who has the property that is following the guidance provided with a mixed use development, the type of uses that are allowed there. I think it's fundamentally unfair to say you can't do it, especially if you own the property. And I think, Mayor, you bring a good point. If we don't do this, what are we going to put here? A home? That was my first thought. They could build a home. That's a bad idea. So this property sits essentially landlocked almost in a way of what we have here. So I appreciate you have provided cross access, with your updated design with connecting to the northern parcel. We don't know what that would look like. Again, last week I'd remind this council, we had a long discussion about these infill projects and putting those projects together, and we approved it, even though we didn't know what the cross access would look like, but we did it. At some level, in order to build out our city, we require developers and property owners to work with the city in a way that achieves our vision. May not be exactly how we envision it up here today, but as long as they're following some guidelines that we've laid out pretty clear, then we should allow them to move ahead. And I think what we have here is they've done what we've asked. They've provided the cross access. They're going to build the stub street essentially to whatever that parcel to the north is. I don't see the traffic count being a noticeable problem. Yes, traffic is not great there, but annexing this in is not going to add to that. So I do go back and forth, but I think I'm going to come down where I would like to see this project go forward, because if we don't, then I would say that it should be incumbent on anyone who's listening tonight that don't bring us a project here, because it would be fundamentally unfair to say no to this person and yes to the next one.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
happy to weigh in. I was not supportive of this request last week. And Councilmember Schrader said it's kind of caused some sleepless nights, and when a meeting ends, we don't stop thinking about these projects, and this one has certainly sat with me, and it came up a lot quicker than I anticipated. Councilmember Overton, you bring up a really valid point about, kind of catalyst projects that change, and you look at certainly the village, what's happened at along Overland, where there's, big and small pieces of dirt coming together to do something unique. I see some similarities in this, but I also kind of tend to look at this like this is a very large infill area, and it kind of tracks because it's complicated and frustrating as a lot of our infill projects are. I think where I have landed is that, certain types of use along Overland, I do think makes sense. I guess what I'm saying is developing east and west right now makes sense in kind of a piecemeal fashion for me. How does each, kind of that frontage piece play out? Because that can help also invite what a gateway would look like in this area. Developing north and south without even a bubble plan would be really, really difficult. The cross-access pieces, to me, I think gives good flexibility for when the north and south does start to develop, or I guess the north does start to develop, that it will preserves the opportunity to do some master planning around it. And it's complementary to some of the existing businesses that, not just around this area, but are also to the north along Flatiron. That's going to be a critical piece as well. So this is a case where I think a continuance for me allowed me to think a little bit more about this, look at it a little bit more holistically, really focus on, again, that east to west makes more sense than the north and south. And so I think I'll likely be in favor of this project this evening.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Whitlock.
since my good colleague to the right shared an experience from the past that he's proud of, I'll share one that I'm not proud of. I got thrown out of a softball game once on a called third strike because I told the umpire the only thing he was consistent at was being inconsistent. What I see here is some consistency. I see a business develop to the east. I see Zamzows to the west. If I go farther to the west, up to Eagle and then past Eagle, I see some consistency. And I mentioned this at the last hearing on the frontage along Overland. I think that's consistent. When you look to the south of Overland, you see apartment buildings, and I think you'll see consistency to the south moving to the east on Overland as well, so that there's some consistency. I don't know what will be built to the north, but I was sympathetic to the arguments that we need to be able to provide some cross access We need that access if and when that area to the north develops. So in my mind, I think this project is consistent with what we already have annexed and what is consistent with a frontage along a very busy roadway. And I think the applicant has come back and addressed the concerns that were raised at the last hearing about still maintaining and preserving an opportunity to have access in the future for whatever is developed. And that may be 20 years, 40 years down the road. I don't know. But I support consistency, and I think that this project is consistent with what already has been approved and what is appropriate along the frontage there of Overland. So I will be supportive of this project tonight.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Little Roberts.
Mr. Mayor, thank you to the applicant tonight for really taking to heart our concerns and coming back with the substreets and things. I think that's been a big help. The traffic at that corner, that's a pretty regular route for me. I am concerned there, but I think that hopefully there is signage, and with the painting will help let people know to not block that intersection. Because I also think that that's a great spot for a restaurant. There's not a ton of restaurants right there in that area. And I think that that's definitely got potential to maybe be a gateway if and when the rest of this area does develop, because it could be a very long time. So with those changes, I will be supporting the project.
All right, Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
good deliberation from council, but I'm prepared to make a motion. After reviewing all staff applicant testimony, I move that we approve application H-2024-0053 as presented this evening, which is, what day are we at today? The 28th of January. And note the reduction of the north boundary as requested by the applicant.
Second.
Councilman Cavanagh, would you
My
also
motion is second.
want to include cross-access to the north as shown on the concept plan?
Mr. Mayor, again, I probably should be more clear because that was presented this evening by the applicant. I tried to reference that as their part of their testimony, but yeah, that was inclusive within my motion, the exhibit that's before us.
Second agrees.
And the second agrees to, and that is the case. Is there a discussion on the motion? If not, clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cavanagh.
Aye.
Little Roberts.
Aye.
Taylor.
Aye.
Overton.
No.
Strater.
Aye.
Whitlock.
Aye.
5 ayes, 1 nay, and the item is agreed to. Okay, thank you. With that, we'll move on to item 3, public hearing for Fairview Drive-Through, H 2024-0049. We will open this public hearing with staff comments.
This application is for a conditional use permit and a development agreement modification. The property is located at 4300 East Fairview Avenue. The conditional use permit for the development of a 1,843 square foot quick lube oil change facility and drive-through coffee shop within the CUP is because it's within 300 feet of another drive-through, which is a bank that is next door. And the existing resident to the north. And the development agreement modification is to establish new hours of operations for the coffee shop to begin service at 5 a.m. The current development agreement states that businesses cannot begin until 7 a.m. and they end at 7 p.m., but they're only asking for the coffee shop to begin at 5 a.m. because human being, that is their business operations at all of their locations begin operation at 5 a.m. The Quick Loop Shop will begin operation at 8 a.m. and end at 7 a.m. We had a we have a condition in the staff report that states that the applicant previously had parking spaces back here, 7 parking spaces, and we felt that those parking spaces interfered with the flow of traffic for the Loops shop and the coffee shop drive-through. So we asked that those spaces be relocated to the south side of the property, or that the applicant will provide a site plan that both staff and the applicant agreed upon. And we also were asking, the applicant was asking for a waiver from city council to add the trash enclosure within the existing landscape buffer. Since there was already, the trash enclosure for the bank was already located in it, and they were just gonna expand on it, the trash enclosure. But the applicant is placing the trash enclosure outside of the landscape buffer now, so that waiver is no longer necessary. And then based on the site plan that was provided, staff and the applicant felt that the flow of this new site plan that is here meets the intent, and it does not, it still provides cross-access on the north side of the building, on the north side of the property, and on the south side of the property. Access to the property is from Fairview Avenue. So there is good queuing for the drive-through, and it's great flow for cars that go into the Loop place. They meet the required parking standards for this building and the type of businesses that are in here. These are the building elevations that were provided. They're just conceptual building elevations. They have not been approved. They still have to go through design review. Showing the Loop location and the coffee shop. This portion is the coffee shop, and this is the base for the Loop business. So the conceptual building elevations consist of stucco, stone, wood, and metal accent. Again, the final design is required to comply with our design standards and our architectural standard manual on anything that is recorded with the development agreement. Again, asking for a development agreement modification just to change the business hours of the coffee shop from 7 a.m. to 5 a.m. The current development agreement says that business begins at 7 a.m. and ends at 7 p.m. So these are pictures of the current site. And with that, I will send for any questions that you may have on this particular application. But there, excuse me, there were some comments which are listed in the document that you have. The last comment was received today or yesterday regarding the hours of operations for the proposed coffee shop, and mentioned Ada County's noise ordinance. So with that, I will stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Council, any questions for staff?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
just a quick education question. The coffee shop is obviously a drive-through.
It is, not the Lube Oil place.
The Lube Oil is not a drive-through, even though it's got 2 lanes and they're driving through,
It's not a drive.
correct? Just making sure I understand.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
not a drive-through.
Drive through it. Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Caver.
Linda, thanks for the report. I want to make sure my recollection is correct. This is Part of this borders the city of Boise, right?
It does. Boise is right next door.
So, Mr. Mayor, Linda,
Cover.
I don't know if we do this. It's been a minute since we've had an application that kind of touches, another city's border. Do we do any kind of proactive engagement with the city of Boise about, hey, we share a border? I know that's in Meridian, but in terms of, I guess maybe I'd call good neighbor engagement, do we communicate with them? Do we solicit any feedback or comments? Is it something that we don't do by policy, but do sometimes in practice? I feel like in the past, we've had a few applications where Boise's provided some commentary. I just didn't see any this time around.
Mayor, members of the council, depends on the application. So if it's, say, for example, there's a property owner that's in the Boise City area of impact, and they want to be part of Meridian, we send them to Boise to say, are you okay if we amend our map and they join us? And because we can provide services and vice versa. It goes back and forth. But in this typical situation, no, we would not transmit a
Okay.
conditional use or a DA modification to the city of Boise for comment.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks, Linda. Appreciate it.
Okay, would the applicant like to come forward?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Lovely to see you all tonight. I'll just wait for Linda to pull up my presentation, and then I'll introduce myself. I'm Ethan Mansfield, representing Hawkins Companies, 855 West Broad Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702. We are the developer on this project on behalf of Oil Changers and Human Bean. Guess my presentation's a little too meaty for the computer, but I promise I won't talk about every single slide. Thanks, Linda. So I don't have too much to add above what Linda talked about. I think she covered it really well. We worked after the Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation of approval to get a site plan that worked for both staff and our users. I'm having a little bit of a challenge changing slides. I'm just pressing the arrow. Great, so here's the overall location. You can see primary access is going to be taken off of Fairview Avenue, with secondary access being off of Venture Street, which, as Linda noted, has cross-access provisions on the south side and the north side of the property. Here's the new and improved site plan. We're providing 12 parking spaces. That's a 6.5 per 1,000 square foot ratio. It's over double what is provided. We're really happy that we were able to pull the trash enclosure outside of the landscape buffer, so that we can provide additional screening for the residential properties to the north. And, that's pretty much it. I'm happy to answer any questions. It's relatively straightforward. We are noting Human Being is requesting a 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. hours of operations. This is consistent with every other human being in Meridian and also across the valley, so it's very standard. If you'd like to, here's a overview of each of the locations in Meridian. And so we respectfully request your approval of both the conditional use permit and the development agreement modification. Thank you very much, and I'll stand for any questions.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ethan. Council questions, Councilwoman Little Roberts.
Mr. Mayor and Ethan, thanks for being in front of us tonight. So how close is the house? And do they have any issues with it starting at 5 a.m.? I live really close to a human being, not close enough to hear them though, but I know that when I'm out walking the dog, they've got a pretty decent line at 5 a.m.
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman Little Roberts, that is a great question. We are about 280 feet from the nearest residential property. So they are pushed very far forward on their lot. There's a big backyard, and then there's that 25-foot landscape buffer, and then our development. So there's quite a bit of space, and there is actually a requirement in the city code, if I'm not mistaken, to limit the noise from the drive-through to the property boundary. So that is a requirement of your code already, as well as there's a noise ordinance for the city of Meridian that also controls noise. So amplified noise isn't supposed to be heard in anybody's house, and we can make sure we follow that.
Thank you.
Ethan, just to clarify, you said 250 feet from the property boundary. You mean from the house structure?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct. From our structure to the house structure,
Okay.
just about 280 feet.
Okay, just want to make sure we're hearing the same thing.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Kavner.
Mr. Mansfield, you'll have to forgive me. I'm not a patron of human being. I hope you don't hold it against me. Do they use you said you used the term amplified. Do they use like a speaker I speak into a speaker to take the order and they speak in a speaker to report back to me like Starbucks or other similar type of industries?
I'm gonna just check in with our development partner Bronson, who actually speaks frequently with human being. I too do not frequent human beings, so you're not alone. Bronson, is it correct that they do not use amplification? Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Cavanagh, we can absolutely get clarity, but we don't think that there's actually any amplification involved in this.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Kavner.
To me, that's an important element. So if you can get that answer to us, be the inclusion of the public hearing, maybe in your closing comments, that'd be helpful.
Absolutely.
Now, so I guess for clarification, are you suggesting that they have someone out talking directly to the person? Is that what you're? I can say I've been through human being enough with my wife that I don't recall someone ever coming out and taking our order as we're waiting, especially if there's no other cars. But I just want to make sure we're talking the same thing. Is that what you're talking about? If that's your model?
Mr. Mayor, yeah, we'll get clarification on exactly how it works. I know that sometimes at the busy periods, a shop like Dutch Bros obviously will have some folks, walking outside. I haven't seen that at Human Being. But again, Mr. Kavanagh, I'm not a Human Being patron very frequently, so I will get clarification on exactly like how much is it amplified? Is it a person?
Yeah, is it done through a kiosk or are you talking directly face to face to a person? I think is that the basic.
Mr. Mayor, I think what I'm trying to confirm is my opinion, one person talking to another to take a coffee order creates a certain amount of sound, much less than somebody, repeating something back in an amplified speaker so that's what I'm trying to get to the understanding is how the orders are taken and how that process would impact the residents that surround it.
And I'm really trying to remember personally, just like, I know we've driven up enough when it's not busy that we talk directly to them. But I know I've also sat in line for a while and I can't imagine that we didn't order till we got up there.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
That meant nothing coming from me. So, council, any other questions at this time? Okay, thank you, Ethan.
Thanks very much.
Rick, we have everyone's time to provide testimony.
Mr. Mayor, yes, and I apologize for mispronouncing, but Marlene Aspiazu.
Good evening, Marlene. If you can speak into the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Marlene Ospiazu.
Well, can you pull it down closer to you?
My name is Marlene Ospiazu, and I live at 4285 East Venture Place, and I am directly behind everything that's going on. And my only thing is, I don't have a problem with, any of that coming in at all. What my problem is, I would like to have like a barrier wall, because where I live in my backyard, it faces Fairview. So I can see all the cars and the lights going by, which is okay. But when I notice that when people, cars come into the parking lot, into the lot, and our glass, where we live, our house is basically all glass. So we can see all the lights when anyone comes into the parking lot. So if they had the coffee shop, I'm assuming I would probably see the car lights and the brake lights, like early in the morning, because it would be dark, But that was and that's why I would like to have like a sound barrier, because we are directly right behind. And I can, because even now, when they pulled into where that little, where he's selling all those little shed things, you can see all the car lights and everything. So I would just like to have a barrier wall, because right now there is a fence there, but it's kind of like, it has like little cracks in it. And apparently maybe our ground is a little bit lower than up there, because we can see everything when the cars come in. So I'm pretty sure when the coffee shop, we're going to be seeing them going in this way, going out that way. And that's the only thing that I was concerned about.
Thank you. Council
You're welcome.
questions?
Thank you.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Marlene,
Yes.
thank you for being here tonight. I'm always curious, there's lots of steps that happen before something lands before the city council. Have you had an opportunity to speak with the applicant about that request?
Yes, I did. And he said that it would be too expensive. It would be too much money to put a barrier wall.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Council, any additional questions? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that was everyone.
Is there anybody else present that would like to provide testimony on this item, either in the room or online? Or online, you can use the raise your hand feature, or if you're in the room, please come forward. Seeing none, ask the applicant to come forward to close.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just first like to address the question of amplified noise from Councilmember Cavanagh. We just spoke with the franchisee for Human Being. She has 12 locations across the Treasure Valley. Only one has amplified noise, and she would prefer not to have amplified noise at this location. What happens is the customers will order at the window, and if it gets busy, they will send a runner out to take orders. So to clarify, there will be no amplified noise. Secondly, I'd like to address our neighbor's concerns about impacts to her property. I 100% understand that. And actually, we had plans to construct a closed vision fence along the northern boundary. We're probably something like vinyl, so it didn't have gaps in it. We are more than happy to do that. We did see it wasn't a condition of approval because there is a fence already there, but understanding that the fence may be in slightly less than new condition, we're more than happy to install a new closed vision fence on and we can even make sure that it's far enough into our property that it doesn't experience that grade loss that she was explaining. Because I do think that's an important element, right? Because you've got, obviously, if the headlights are 3 feet above the ground. So we can absolutely commit to installing a closed vision fence.
Council, any questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Cavanagh.
just a comment, Mr. Mansfield, I appreciate that. I got to be real upfront with you. I was not supportive of this conditional use permit for those very reasons. And knowing that you've got an applicant or a client that is not going to be using any amplification and are doing your part to address the headlights that are going to be entering or could enter her home in the mornings, those satisfied my main concern. So I appreciate your proactive work on that.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
just a clarification from staff while the applicant's still up here. If they install a fence under our current city code, we can't have two fences back to back. They have to be a certain distance apart, if I'm not mistaken.
Mayor, members of the council, you can't have double fencing when it's common lot to common lot. So this wouldn't be that instance. But if the property owner is amenable, maybe they can tear down the old fence and put up a new fence in the same spot, depending on how their construction plans come out and what the development of the site looks like. So I think there's some flexibility for the applicant, but I also want to assure the neighbor and the council that the code does require fencing. But applicant was correct. There was existing fencing, so we didn't require them to put in fencing. So
Totally get that.
And it's a minor thing, but the property lines don't match up. That there's a portion of at least according to this, portion of the Mary's property that would not have the same fence line because it goes on to some, so I think it's working together to determine what's the most appropriate way or place to figure out what makes sense, since it doesn't extend to the property to the east. Okay, thank you, Ethan.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
move that we close the public hearing on item number 3.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing on item H 2024-0049. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The public hearing is closed.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
council on a conditional use permit, very narrow pathway for kind of us weighing in. Certainly the development agreement gives us a little bit more latitude. Again, appreciate the neighbor kind of flagging that concern and the applicant moving quickly to make sure that those concerns were addressed. I voiced what I thought were my concerns earlier. I think they've largely been adhered to. And so unless there's any deliberation, I'm prepared to make a motion. Okay, Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
move that we approve item number 3, application H-2024-0049, include all staff and applicant and public testimony. Noting a couple of important pieces, which is that in the development agreement that the site will not use any form of electronic amplification to communicate, and that the applicant will work with the area neighbors to construct a fence that would block the light from the vehicles that are entering the property. And Linda, I know I really kind of stumbled through that, and so if there's any concern, I expect you to set me straight.
Second?
Have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? If not, clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cavanagh.
Aye.
Little Roberts.
Aye.
Taylor.
Aye.
Overton.
Aye.
Strader.
Aye.
Whitlock.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carries, and is agreed to. Okay. All right. Good luck. Next time up is item 4, a public hearing for SHP 2024-0004. We'll open this public hearing with staff comments.
Okay. Our next application is for a short plat to divide 3.123 acres of land into 2 lots. It's an existing parcel. The property was annexed in 1992 as part of the Candlelight subdivision development. It wasn't part of that plat. It was on the annex and received the R4 zoning. There's an existing single-family home that will remain on Lot 1, and it will be accessed via shared driveway off of North Morello Avenue. The proposed driveway to the existing house shall be paved with the capability of supporting fire vehicles and equipment. The applicant is not proposing any new fencing, as there's fencing along the perimeter of the property. The applicant will be closing off this access to Ustick Road, and they will be removing the fencing from Morello Drive, Morello Avenue, so that they can take access to the property. They are required to provide a 25-foot wide street buffer along Ustick. And the landscaping has to meet the requirements of our UDC. There will be, they're required to provide a 10-foot multi-use pathway. The landscaping shall be measured from the back of the curb. But ACHD is anticipating widening Ustick Road. So currently, this is a landscaping that is along Ustick Road, but that does not meet city standards, and we have talked to the applicant about this. But this is proposed widening for Ustick along this is the property here. So the applicant will have to work with ACHD, because we did put in a condition number 8, that if the landscape buffer has not been installed prior to ACHD widening of Ustick and the installation of the multi-use pathway, the applicant shall submit a surety for the landscape buffer prior to city engineer signature. So the applicant stated that ACHD is in the process of purchasing the right-of-way along the front of the property. So that property will be ACHD soon. The applicant, so according to the applicant, ACHD plans for the frontage to include a 4-foot wide planter area that they typically install with gravel. The applicant states that the property owner will work with ACHD to determine what has been planned so they can develop the surety number for the future installation of the planned materials. So we do want the applicant to work with ACHD to enter into a license agreement for any landscaping placed within the right-of-way. This is the continuation of the widening of Ustick Road, because they're going all the way to Linder. And these are pictures of the current property. There were no written comments received on this project. I did talk to one of the neighbors that was at the end of the dead-end road, who inquired about the property. Don't know if they're on the line or in here tonight, but did have a conversation about that. Pretty straightforward project. It's still keeping some nice lots along there. According to the applicant, they will be building a home for their parents on that additional lot. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Linda. Council, any questions for staff? Okay, would the applicant like to come forward? Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. Ben Semple with Rodney Evans and Partners, 1450 West Bannock Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702. I'm here representing Jason Weary. He's the property owner. And I want to first thank Linda for her presentation and working with us on the staff report. We are in agreement with all conditions of approval contained within, as well as any of the agency comments. We have been in conversation or coordination with ACHD regarding that frontage there. They've indicated that it sounds like their plan is to get that thing installed within a year. And so we're working with them to figure out what does that improvement look like? How much is that surety? My client is going to provide that surety to ACHD for the installation of that material, whatever it may be. And so we're really looking forward to this project moving forward. He does live on the property in the existing single-family home right now. His parents live in another part of Meridian, but he's splitting this to build them a home there. We'll run all utilities in from Morello Avenue and then close the entrance off U Stick just to make that a consistent frontage along there. I want to note that because we're not entirely sure where ACHD's curb line is falling, we've measured our landscape buffer from the back of sidewalk. So there's 25 feet of landscaping plus about another 100 feet of landscaping between that and the existing home. The future home will fall on the lot somewhere where we're not cutting down any trees, and we'll provide some additional landscaping as you can see typical for residential within Meridian. I did get a phone call from, I believe, the same neighbor at the end of the street there. They were wondering about the use of the property upon the split. So it's another single family home. And then some of the condition of that fence at the end of Morello is a little questionable, shall we say. So my client's looking to replace what he needs to make sure everybody's whole so that dogs don't go in the yards where they don't belong. Yeah, so I'd stand for any other questions you may have.
Thank you. Council, any questions for the applicant? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone sign up on this item?
Mr. Mayor, nobody marked that they wanted to speak.
Okay, well, if you'd like to speak, we'll go ahead and come. Either there's several people, so just come on up and sit in the front row and everyone will take their turn. Good evening, state your name and address for the record. Be recognized for 3 minutes.
So I am Jeff Brown. I am the president of the HOA for Candlelight, and I'm a little bit concerned about extending Morello and what that looks like. Whether we're going to have sidewalk, whether we're going to have curbing. I envisioned a cul-de-sac. It appears that it's something different. But if we're going to have sidewalk and curbing and it's going to be wide enough, then the HOA doesn't have a problem.
Okay. Council, any questions? Would staff like to answer that question or?
Mayor, Council. So Morello is not extending. It's just a driveway coming off of there. So the roadway will not be extended. As you can see on the plan here, there's just a driveway going into the property to serve both lots. There is no extension of the roadway.
Okay, well, that's kind of a problem. I mean, it would be good if we continued the sidewalk, if we continued the look of the street.
So it's a dead-end street that just has a driveway coming off of it going onto someone's property at the end of that roadway. So it's just property at the end of the roadway that does not have a road that is continuing through there. It's just a driveway.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Mr. Brown, I think what I'm hearing is you're asking for is you actually want a pedestrian connection to go from Morello to Ustick. Is that what I'm kind of inquiring? Maybe you give council a little bit more understanding as to what the concern is of the homeowners association.
Well, as it stands now, we have a roadblock, and what they're proposing is a driveway. What we would like to see is the continuation of the sidewalk and the curb and gutter to a certain extent.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Mr. Brown, where was the neighbor?
Well,
Let me just understand.
Because they are going to continue Morello into a driveway. And what we're suggesting is that they continue the curb and gutter to a certain extent, at least into the T, and in continuing the curb and gutter, that they continue the sidewalk as well, at least into the T, and then create the driveway after that.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I appreciate the clarification.
Thank you. Okay, next.
Hi, my name's Connie Springer, 3072 North Merlot Avenue. This mostly affects me. My house is right there on that corner. I'm the one that made all the phone calls. It's my dogs I'm worried about. The owner walked over. We walked through the whole thing. I'm perfectly fine with it. He did a great job of stabilizing my concerns. So I'm fine with it. It's going to be my front yard, just so you know.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, council persons, appreciate you hearing us out on this. My name is Devin Fletcher. Address is 2891 West Joust Street, which happens to be in the Candlelight neighborhood. I'd love to see this project, especially feeling for the owner that wants to have his parents live next door to him and split the lot. The only concern I would have is if we could go back to the collage of 5 pictures. The owner right there, I'll go back if you could, right there. The picture, 2 pictures, my apologies. On the right is what the current owner has put up for a fence as a buffer zone for U-stick. My opinion on that is although it's actually a pretty cool fence, it doesn't aesthetically match the surroundings. That along that U-stick road, that ACHD is going to widen. Of course, we have the sidewalk, but all the other subdivisions have community vinyl fencing that's white, fairly common thing. It tends to be an oddball lot aesthetically. It just doesn't quite match. I would love to see something that looks similar to what the other subdivisions, since this is going to be the back of their property now. This would be the north side of the property if you're looking at the plat. You know, I'd hate to see him have to tear this fence out and do something different, but it's just not aesthetically pleasing, doesn't match the area. That would be my only concern. Otherwise, I think it's a good lot split. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt?
Hi there, I'm Heather Wenger. I live on North Morello Avenue as well. And I'm sorry I didn't, if there was a pre-hearing or other meeting about this, then I'm sorry I didn't see it until the sign was up, and it seems like there's been things going on maybe. Can somebody clarify what the R4 zoning designation means to split?
Yeah, Linda or Bill.
It just means that it's a residential lot and it's, the lot size is 8,000 square feet.
Okay, and how many residences can go on that, please?
He could put as many that could fit as long as it worked with the road network. So, but he only chose to split it in half.
Okay, so he's choosing to split it in half, so there'll be 2 lots, 1 and 2. And how many homes could go on each of those lots, either now or in the future, please?
Well, as of right now, because it's just 2 lots, it will be 1 home on each, unless they want to do a secondary dwelling on one of or both of the lots.
Okay, so R4 does not mean that they could have 4 units per lot in the future.
If they came in the future to subdivide the property after a certain period of time, they would have to meet the minimum lot requirements in order to do that. But at this time,
be a
they have not proposed that.
Whole separate
It would be a whole different thing,
designation
and the
and-
roadways
okay.
would look a whole lot different.
Okay, all right. Yeah, that's fine. And then this is the picture I was curious about. I wanted to clarify what I think maybe the HOA president was asking for. And maybe he can clarify, but now the left side is pulled up. I'm wondering if he's meaning he wants the sidewalks to go around so that it looks more like the rest of the neighborhood. Like maybe that would be sufficient so that it's not, or just a prettier fence, but I think they said they were going to do a prettier fence. So, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that'd like to provide testimony on this item at this time? Then would the applicant like to come forward and make any final comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Again, Ben Semple. So to address a couple of these, so yeah, Linda's correct. We're not extending Morello Avenue. It will be just a private driveway, but we do have to meet fire department access requirements. Right now, that segment of Morello is about 150 feet long, which is the maximum extent that a fire department would back up. So because we're extending a driveway into the site, we have to build a fire department hammerhead turnaround on the site. So it will be publicly accessible for a turnaround in terms of it's in an easement, but it's not an extension of the public roadway. It's still technically on private property. I was talking with my client, also the owner there, and I think we can figure out a way to work with the HOA here by creating a concrete driveway approach at the end of Morello Avenue effectively, because I believe it's rolled curb all through here. So doing a rolled curb that would cut across the end of Morello right now with a sidewalk on it, so that it would basically be a rolled curb that led up into his property, but there would be a continuous public sidewalk that was within the ACHD right of way, so that if you're walking down Morello, you could cross Morello on a sidewalk rather than just cross through asphalt or someone's private driveway. So I think that that's something that we could easily accommodate with this plan. And hopefully that would kind of make this, it would close off this end of the street, make it look a little bit more consistent. The fencing along U Stick was permitted by the owner. So it was reviewed by the building department as it is right now. I know that fencing styles is like design. Everybody, has their own opinion of what they like. This is what the owner chose. And it would be how he continues and closes the current driveway. R4 zoning here in the future, I know there was concern about redevelopment. In the future, both of these lots could redevelop. And as Linda stated, at that point, the public street would be extended into this site. Public utility mains would be drug in, and there'd be a much more impactful development. But for the foreseeable future, this is going to be 2 single-family homes for my client and his parents to live on one. I would stand for any additional questions you may have.
Thank you. Council, additional questions for the applicant? Councilman Cavanagh.
To comment, Ben, we don't see you very often. And,
Don't, maybe more often though.
Well, I'm looking forward to that because I find you bring us these kind of small projects and you really take them on like this is going to be your home, and you engage with the neighbors like they're going to be your neighbors. And we don't get often to say appreciate what you do, but truly every time you're before us, trying to anticipate what the questions are going to be from the neighbors and work with them to resolve it. And again, any of that feedback, we all knew those answers, but I appreciate you coming up and walking it through so the neighbors here could hear it as well. We don't see that very often. I just want you to know how much I appreciate it.
I appreciate that.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
move that we close the public hearing on item number 4.
Have a motion second to close the public hearing. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the public hearing is closed.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Council, I think this is a pretty straightforward application. Appreciate kind of closing off that access off of U-Stick. That helps with a lot. I see no areas of concern. Appreciate the applicant responding to the neighbors, so I'm prepared to make a motion unless there's any further testimony. Mr. Mayor, considering all applicant, staff, and public testimony, I move we approve item number 4, application SHP 2024-0004, include all staff, applicant, and public testimony.
Second.
Have a motion a second to approve item SHP 2024-0004. Is there discussion on the motion? If not, clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cavanagh.
Aye.
Little Roberts.
Aye.
Taylor.
Aye.
Overton.
Aye.
Strater.
Aye.
Whitlock.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carries. The item is agreed to. Thank you very much. Have a good night. Final item is item 5, election of city council officers and liaison assignments.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Schrader.
Yeah, just maybe to kick off the discussion. I think that Council President Cavanagh has done a great job as our leader in the last year. And just really appreciate all that he's doing. And I would support kind of continuing as we are, if it's okay with everybody else.
Which was with me.
Mr. Mayor?
I don't have any issues that way.
Councilman Taylor to rise in opposition of the motion. Oh, wait.
Like to nominate. No, I appreciate it. I think both Councilman Cavanagh and Vice President Strader have done a good job with the new guys. I'm going to speak for Councilman Whitlock too. Appreciate their guidance, their care, their tutoring, and they've done a good job. I think we're in a good place as a council, so I wholeheartedly support sort of the continuation of what we've got.
Okay. Were we going to do a motion officially tonight? Was that the intention of anybody?
Mr. Mayor, I always look to our legal to tell us what we need to do.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you don't have a specific requirement. Generally on the record, we have had at least a motion for either retaining the same or nominating the same folks or whoever you want to do, just so it's clear in the record what the intent of the council is.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
hey, can we do that in one motion for everybody, or do we need to do two separate ones for you?
Could do it together if you wish.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Taylor.
make a motion that we retain current city council leadership and liaison assignments as currently constituted.
I have a motion, a second, and I'm going to interject for discussion on the liaison assignments because there were some changes that were proposed to the liaison assignments because they had people that were no longer on city council.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Cavanagh.
I did have an opportunity late in the day, apologies, to connect with some of our legal staff, and for the vacancies that were made by Councilmember Borton, I've placed my name there. And as is always the case, if as the year progresses and there's a liaison assignment that a council member is itching to be a part of or itching to be less of, we can continue to have that conversation and reevaluate as needed.
Does the motion maker support the adjustment of replacing one name for the other?
I do.
Second agree?
Yes.
Okay. With that, do I have someone call the question?
Mr. Mayor, call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor of the calling the question, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Question's been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And the election of officers is official as well as liaison assignments. I'll just point out, MIAC went through parliamentary procedure the last two meetings. And so I'm just continuing to borrow from
Level up.
the educational opportunities in that so we can apply it to these meetings if necessary. So,
Loving it. Make us all better.
all right. With that, we'll move on to item 6, which is ordinance number 25-2071. Ask the clerk to read this ordinance by title.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an ordinance related to Black Cat East Stage 2024-0047, annexing a parcel of land located in the northeast quarter of the southeast quarter, section 16, Township 3 North, Range 1 West, Boise Meridian, Ada County, Idaho. More particularly described in Exhibit A, rezoning 3.62 acres of such real property from RUT to the IL zoning district, directing city staff to alter all applicable use and area maps as well as the official zoning maps and all official maps depicting the boundaries and the zoning districts of the city of Meridian in accordance with this ordinance. Providing the copies of this ordinance shall be filed with the Ada County Assessor, the Ada County Treasurer, the Ada County Recorder, and the Idaho State Tax Commission as required by law, repealing conflicting ordinances and providing an effective date.
Thank you, Council. You've heard this ordinance read by title. Is there anybody that would like it read in its entirety? If not, clerk call the roll.
Mr. Mayor, is there a motion?
Oh, sorry. Is there a
Mr. Mayor.
motion?
I move that we approve ordinance number 25-2071.
Second.
Motion is second and third to approve ordinance number 25-2071. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cavanagh. Little Roberts.
Aye.
Taylor.
Aye.
Overton.
Aye.
Strader.
Aye.
Whitlock.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carries. The item is agreed to. Next item up is ordinance number 25-2072. Ask the clerk to read this ordinance by title.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an ordinance related to Pivot Point subdivision H 2024-0029, annexing a parcel of land located in the northwest quarter of the southwest quarter of section 10, Township 3 North, Range 1 West, Boise Meridian, Ada County, Idaho. more particularly described in Exhibit A, rezoning 7.64 acres of such real property from RUT to the R8 zoning district, directing city staff to alter all applicable use and area maps as well as the official zoning maps and all official maps depicting the boundaries and zoning districts of the city of Meridian in accordance with this ordinance. Providing that copies of this ordinance shall be filed with the Ada County Assessor, the Ada County Treasurer, the Ada County Recorder, and the Idaho State Tax Commission as required by law, repealing conflicting ordinances and providing an effective date.
Thank you, council. You've heard this ordinance read by title. Is there anybody that would like it read in its entirety? If not, do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Taylor.
move that we approve ordinance number 25-2072.
Second.
A motion is second to approve ordinance number 25-2072. Is there discussion on the motion? If not, clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cavanagh.
Aye.
Little Roberts. Taylor.
Aye.
Overton.
Aye.
Strater.
Aye.
Whitlock.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carries. The is agreed to. Council, anything under future meeting topics or a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second?
Motion is second to adjourn the meeting. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.